Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 3221, General Offensive. Negative thoughts began to flood Elizabeth's mind. After all, she couldn't help but feel doubtful when she heard the plan from Emperor Charm for the first time. If the purge way was carried out according to the way Emperor Charm had said, then less than 10,000 people were qualified to live. She couldn't imagine the consequences of such a thing. Although she was highly uncertain, she did not show it. Since Emperor Charm was the king of the whole Sun Crow race, Elizabeth still believed his decisions unconditionally, even if she herself was the commander-in-chief of the Divine Lair. After the great change in the Source world, however, no one knew how many people could survive safely. Furthermore, it was rather dull to live in a world with less than 10,000 creatures. In the end, Elizabeth only sighed and gently waved her hand forward. All the corpse spirit Sun Crows flapped their wings, and many demon women from the Divine Lair stood behind the Sun Crows. Numerous Sun Crows turned into dark clouds once again and enveloped the whole atmosphere. After that, it became impossible to see everything inside the dark cloud enclosure from the outside. Meanwhile, Sinclair did not look pleased in the Mountain Sea Pass. Many people had died from the moment he had guarded the Mountain Sea Pass, but all of them were insignificant other Shore Realm warriors. Only a few Oneness guards were killed. Besides, the 12 Oneness generals who had fought against the Sun Crows in the positions of the array were completely unharmed. This time, it wasn't easy for Sinclair to invite 5 disciples from the land of Sword Grief to offer help. It was like adding 5 Oneness generals to the array, but in the blink of an eye, they lost 2 Oneness generals already. More importantly, those 2 who died were Kemp and Hargrove, his right-hand men. It's indeed a pity that Kemp and Hargrove died, but the Mountain Sea Pass is still fine. If it weren't for Zen, the Mountain Sea Pass would have been captured. Basil, who was beside him, comforted. A few seconds had passed, and Sinclair finally calmed down a bit and nodded. It was really close. I went to check the main array, and they don't have many divine crystals left. The array of the Mountain Sea Pass withstood this round of attack, but at the price of 100 million divine crystals, he said. If Zen hadn't killed a large number of self-exploding Sun Crows, the Mountain Sea Pass would have been besieged. Since there are not many divine crystals left, won't the array of the Mountain Sea Pass be unable to work? Guzman asked. The Vastness Mountain is sending 200 million divine crystals here. There shouldn't be any problem, Sinclair answered. Such a war would definitely consume a great deal of divine crystals. A single battle could possibly cost about 10 billion divine crystals, and sometimes it could go up to hundreds of billions of divine crystals. It was so disastrous that the weak forces often ran out of divine crystals before the war ended. But I'm afraid it's still difficult to deal with them if the demon woman of the Divine Lair continues to lead the team to attack, Zen said with a frown. Right now, it was totally lucky for Zen to have found out the location of the demon woman from the Divine Lair. It was thanks to his discovery that he was able to stab her a few times. However, if she continued to bring the Sun Crows to attack again, he would probably have a hard time finding her if he relied solely on luck. If only the Sun Crows didn't attack frequently. Basil sighed. Overall, the Oneness generals, the Oneness guards, and the other Shore Realm warriors who were stationed at the Mountain Sea Pass never had a good sleep ever since the crisis began. It seems that they won't take action frequently in the future, Zen said with a smile. What do you mean? Basil asked. Zen's lips curved into a pout, while the others looked into the distance. Basil also turned to look, and then his gaze froze in shock. The Sun Crows had formed dark clouds in their previous attack, and now they had gathered together and took up half of the sky. The entire sky was divided into black and white. The white part of the sky was an area that the Sun Crows did not cover, and the black part was filled with countless Sun Crows. Then, the black skyline slowly moved towards the Skynet and devoured it little by little. Soon enough, the length of the entire skyline was almost impossible to measure. It's a general offensive, Sinclair exclaimed with wide eyes. Give the order to the Vastness Mountain. And Oneness General roared. Give the order to the Azure Array. The Sun Crow race is launching a general offensive. A silver-armored Oneness general shouted from the top of the Heavenly Wind Pass. According to the Oneness Sky Palace's orders, the 7 arrays and 12 passes in front of the North Mysterious City were the last defense line. Once this defense line was broken, the entire Bloom Divine Province would fall. If that really happened, then the Oneness Sky Palace would have no place to hide except for the 7 mountains. Now that they were under the Sun Crow race's general offensive, they had no choice but to guard their territory with all their might. On the other hand, the evil god sat nonchalantly on the roof of the house at one side of the Heavenly Wind Pass. He appeared to be quite unconcerned as he looked at the dense mass of Sun Crows. The inner world generating avatar was a little different from the Rebirth Land. With the Rebirth Land, Zen could only sense where he was, but not what he was doing or thinking. Zen wouldn't even be able to tell his location from a distance. However, the inner world generating avatar was more closely linked to him. Even if they were more than 100 miles away from each other, Zen could still discern the thoughts in the evil god's mind. The evil god had a strong feeling that he had lied to Zen and planned to escape, but the memories in his mind were not right. The feeling made him uneasy. He hoped that more black sun crows would come over, and that the world would be more chaotic. At that moment, the runes were connected from end to end and converged towards the center of the Azure Array. In the center of the Azure Array, countless layers of runes wrapped around a particular item. At a glance, it looked like a sword, but it was difficult to see what it was because so many runes were wrapped around it. A middle-aged man with long hair stood in the center of the array with his hands behind his back. Then, he gently placed his hand on the item wrapped in the runes. Swoosh! Just then, all the runes became weightless and floated upwards. They looked like thousands of yellow birds that had taken flight. However, it turned out that there was nothing wrapped in the runes right now. Splash! Then, the runes condensed together and formed a huge sword. This sword contained a strange but powerful aura. I haven't used the heavenly rune sword for a long time. It's a pity that Fuxi is not here, said the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man with long hair was the leader of the Azure Mountain, Jonathan Su. Numerous Oneness generals guarded the 12 passes, while the leaders of the 7 mountains watched over the 7 arrays. However, not all of the leaders came. In the Origin Array, countless rays of sword light twisted, rotated, and surged in the array like water ripples. Beside the Origin Array stood Winchell and the other masters of the Origin Mountain. All of them looked serious and solemn. If it was a battle of life and death, the Oneness Sky Palace might not be afraid of the Sun Crow race. However, the 7 arrays were currently in their greatest crisis, and that was the absence of Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin. Without those two, the strength of the Oneness Sky Palace had decreased by more than 50%. Moreover, the outsiders still did not know the news. Then again, if all the soldiers knew it, they would probably suffer from low morale before the battle began. As the beautiful woman who sat in the center of the Origin Array looked at the sullen faces of Winchell and the others, she suddenly said, "Don't worry, everyone. Madame Yasmin has already nurtured 6 million deity sword souls. Although my cultivation base is far inferior to that of Madame Yasmin and I can only use one move of the Origin deity attack, we are not that far from each other when it comes to our strength." The beautiful woman was called Felicity, and she had a close relationship with Dorothy. She was also Winchell's sister-in-law. Although Yasmin had always regarded Dorothy as her successor, the war was about to begin and Dorothy's cultivation base was still low even though she had mastered the Origin swordsmanship. Therefore, it was Felicity who had to go into battle. Chapter 3222, Rebellion. The powerful warriors on the Origin Mountain were able to come up with this replacement method, but that was not the case for Oneness Mountain. In the land of sword grief, Zen had written down the complete truth enlightenment and handed it to Elvinia. As soon as that was done, Elvinia eagerly went straight to the Phoenix Palace. There were 2 reasons for her excitement. First, she wanted to personally hand it over to her father. Second, she wanted to tell her father what she had seen in the Creation Myth Temple. Soon enough, she arrived at the Phoenix Palace. She was told that her father was in the Supreme Dragon Hall. She quickly went to the Supreme Dragon Hall, but the gate was heavily guarded and she couldn't see her father. Later on, she visited her mother, Flamen, instead. That was when she knew that her father was trapped on the other shore, and the Oneness Sky Palace was under a great crisis. She thought of Gorin recruiting soldiers in the land of sword grief before, and finally realized that the Oneness Sky Palace was really in great trouble this time. At this time, huge swords surrounded the Oneness Array. On top of the swords, hilt stood Athamar, Gorin, and the other Oneness governors. Then, 2 old men with gray hair stood on the 2 swords at the forefront of the Oneness Array. The man on the left was Pierce Gone, who had been following Eastern Emperor Tai. The man on the right was called Auden Ning. Many important officials of the Oneness Sky Palace were gathered on the Oneness Mountain. They were the group with the most number of members and also the strongest, but their respective leader was not there. Everyone present had extraordinary auras, but none of them was confident. Based on the movement of the Sun Crows, they still intend to break the vastness array and capture the Mountain Sea Pass. It seems easy, but in reality it is very dangerous for them, said Pierce. He took out a small golden gourd as he spoke, pulled the cork, and took a sip of the wine. Auden's wrinkly face convulsed. The man was dressed in a cloth gown and he looked like an ordinary woodcutter. On his right hand was a rusty sword. Despite his plain appearance, all of the Oneness governors in the gathering highly respected him. He and Pierce were known as Eastern Emperor Tai's very capable assistants. Both of them were slightly stronger than the Oneness governors and were as strong as the mountain leaders. The Sun Crows clearly know what will happen, Auden said in a shaky voice. Once their main forces have gotten close to the Mountain Sea Pass, the nearest 3 passes and 3 arrays will kill them. They will suffer heavy casualties, he continued. While he explained, his fingers drew lines in the air and pointed out the locations of the passes, such as the Mountain Sea Pass. Athamar, Goran, and the others silently stared at the lines and passes and studied them seriously. Elder Auden is right, anyone with a discerning eye can see that it is a trap. They won't choose to do so, unless they are really arrogant, or... Before Athamar could finish his sentence, he abruptly stopped. At that moment, all of them began to feel anxious. No words were needed for them to know what could obviously happen. It was known that Gethin wasn't convinced when Eastern Emperor Tai had beaten him in the past. He had never admitted defeat. Unfortunately, since the Vastness Mountain was one of the 7 mountains, they could never rebel after Eastern Emperor Tai had taken control of the Bloom Divine Province. Thus, the Shu clan and the Vastness Mountain both lived under the roof of the Oneness Sky Palace. Yet, in the past few years, Gethin had secretly expanded his influence until the Vastness Mountain became as powerful as the Origin Mountain. Although he never revealed his ambition, everyone knew what he wanted. Even then, he never dared to betray Eastern Emperor Tai as long as the Emperor was alive. Nevertheless, a great opportunity had now presented itself to him. If he wanted to rebel, he could help the Sun Crows from within the sky net. That could be the exact reason why the Sun Crows chose to attack Mountain Sea Pass first. These people from the Oneness Sky Palace were all intelligent beings, so they immediately knew what Gethin was up to based on some of his obscure movements. What can we do? Are we going to attack Gethin now? Goran asked. Kill him, Auden answered with a glint in his eyes. He hasn't rebelled, that was only our guess. If he really wants to rebel, then he must be well prepared, said Pierce as he closed his eyes. Everything would be fine if Eastern Emperor Tai was here, but since he is not, we will be at a dead end sooner or later, he added. Well, we can't just sit still and wait for death no matter what. Now that things have come to this, we can only follow the established plan. If Gethin really dares to rebel, Athamar countered, his eyes filled with determination. Don't worry, if he dares to rebel, I will perish with him, Auden reassured with a hesitant voice. The second he was done speaking, he stomped his feet on the ground. In turn, all the lofty swords outside the Oneness array began to glow. It was Athamar who had made all the lofty swords, but everyone had control over them. As the Sun Crows continued to advance, everyone in the 7 arrays and the 12 passes got ready to fight. On the lower tier of the Mountain Sea Pass. Alas, I thought we didn't need to be the bait since we had General Zen, but now, we don't even have a chance to be the bait. With so many Sun Crows, we are doomed. It doesn't matter. As human beings, we have to protect our families. At that point, the Sun Crows had covered the entire heaven and earth. Even though the other Shore Realm warriors on the lower tier couldn't see clearly what was happening, they knew that the Sun Crows were serious about this war. The reason they had hesitated earlier was that the Oneness guards had driven them out to fight, but they themselves remained in the Mountain Sea Pass. Now that everyone, including the Oneness generals and the Oneness guards, was ready to attack, they did not complain anymore. On the contrary, Sinclair felt his throat run dry at the sight of the Sun Crows. As a leader, he should have said something reassuring to their army, but now he was restless and didn't know what to say. Suddenly, purple lights glowed from behind the Mountain Sea Pass. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Those lights transformed into swords that were tens of millions of feet long, and anyone who saw the lights felt their power and strength. Then, the sharp lights pierced through the air. It looked like they could penetrate through everything. The Vastness Array is activated. Everyone, don't be discouraged. With the vastness array's support, we will not lose this battle. Sinclair finally shouted to boost their army's morale. The shining sword radiance truly did make them feel more confident. The Oneness guards, and the ordinary warriors at the other shore realm finally felt resolute. At the source of the lights, an extraordinary aura emanated from Gethin as he sat cross-legged, his gaze fixed on the northeast. Sinclair in the mountain sea pass ahead is encouraging his soldiers, Natasha said in an enchanting voice from beside Gethin. I'm wondering what expression he will have if he knows the truth. Ha ha, a leader of the intelligence agency sneered. Gethin snorted. Those old men are smart and cunning. I'm afraid they have already figured out the truth seeing the Sun Crow's movements, he commented. A detached smile graced Natasha's lips. So what, you didn't play any dirty tricks? What else can they do? She remarked. The Vastness Mountains rebellion wasn't actually a secret conspiracy, considering that the Oneness Sky Palace was already in danger. In fact, Gethin was open about it because he was sure that the Oneness Sky Palace couldn't do anything to him. Chapter 3223, Powerful Defense. The countless Sun Crows formed a black ocean as they raced towards the Skynet. When the mass of crows were within 20 miles of the Skynet, they broke their original formation and swarmed together to move in one direction. Towards the Mountain Sea Pass. The moment they did so though, the Skynet also began to shift and change. It had originally been traversing across the southwest, but now it had begun to fold and roll away from the Mountain Sea Pass to advance on the mass of Sun Crows. It looked to be attempting to encircle them. As it began to roll inwards on either side, the generals and soldiers of the Battle Rage Pass on the left, and those of the Heaven Wind Pass on the right, began to converge on the Mountain Sea Pass. Other generals and soldiers from the 6 arrays and 11 passes, excluding those in the Vastness Array and the Mountain Sea Pass, advanced forward along the sides of the Skynet. Splash! As the battalion of Sun Crows grew closer, they scattered, putting more and more distance between each of them. In their reformation, they could now see a smaller group of Corpse Spirit Sun Crows amongst them. At the sight of about 100 Corpse Spirit Sun Crows, the warriors of the 7 arrays of the Oneness Sky Palace emerged grim-faced. The Sun Crow race. They are absolutely insane. I can't believe Emperor Charm has released the Corpse Spirit Sun Crows. They are the basis of their race. They truly plan to wage a mighty battle against the Oneness Sky Palace. In the past, the two factions had a peaceful relationship. They had allied themselves, and their leaders had known one another quite well. There was no doubt at all that the Corpse Spirit Sun Crows were incredibly powerful, but they rarely ever fought unless their race found themselves faced with the crisis of possible extinction. So the others were boggled as to why they showed up now. They were determined to destroy the Oneness Sky Palace. Elizabeth's lips stretched into a charming smile as she sat at the top. There were countless humans gathering like ants behind the Skynet. As far as Elizabeth was concerned, apart from the masters of the Oneness Sky Palace, the soldiers at the other shore realm were the same as these brainless Sun Crows. They were all meaningless and just numbers to her. Their numbers would dwindle and disappear, their bodies turning to cheap dust and being swept away with the wind into the sky, forever lost. Such was the terrible, pathetic lives of the weak. Begin the first wave of attacks. Elizabeth stretched her hands out slightly in front of her. A gentle glow began to emanate from her shoulders, and turned into a ray of golden light as it wrapped along her arms. The glow was nearly blinding as it stretched past her wrists and towards her fingertips. Buzz! Once the golden light met her fingertips, it bloomed and spread away from her fingers. The Sun Crows, even the Corpse Spirit Sun Crows for all their power, did not possess intelligence. They were under the control of the Divine Lair, which was under the command of Emperor Charm. Since Emperor Charm was nowhere to be found, they were controlled by Elizabeth in this war. As the light spread farther from her fingertips, the eyes of the many Sun Crows glowed with the simple message attack. Quack, quack, quack. As one, they rushed to the Skynet. In response, Zen and the other Oneness generals entered the positions of the array once again. Sinclair stood at the forefront, watching impassively as the Sun Crows charged forward. Without a single thought, he roared, "Soldiers of the Mountain Sea Pass, attack!" He had used much strength behind the command, so much so, that it had drowned out the cry of the Sun Crows. Soldiers of the Battle Rage Pass, attack! Soldiers of the Heaven Wind Pass! All Oneness generals in the remaining 11 passes responded in kind in the distance. The Oneness guards and the warriors at the other shore realm who were stationed in the passes activated their other shore tokens in a flash and were there to greet the first attacks of the Sun Crows. In a battle of this magnitude, Zen found it hard to concentrate and determine those he should protect. He sat upright at his position, eyes closed. There was a constant energy pulsing from his body, and into the space around him. He had only used 128 transparent long swords earlier, however, as he continued to draw out the other shore power now, the number of swords increased exponentially. Each sword contained 10 divine megatons of force, and this time he had drawn out 16,000 divine megatons of force. The sight of more than 1,000 flying swords nearly made Basil's eyes pop out of their sockets. Not to mention the difficulty of controlling the swords, the amount of force it took to shape them was no laughing matter. What incredible other shore tokens had Zen fused with? Now was not the time to question him though. After watching the spectacle for a long moment, Basil held his long sword in the air and made a wide arc towards the sun crows. Rise! 1,600 flying swords spiraled up as if they were jubilant, dancing birds, and entangled with each other before rushing into the sky. Every time a sword pierced through a sun crow, a spray of blood would burst from the bird in a cloud of red mist. The weapons were efficient and quick with ridding the sky of the creatures. They had at least cleaned up a good portion of them on the front line. It's that human brat again. Queenie glared at the swords, her eyes glinting dangerously and promising death. Who will destroy the positions of the array with me? She cried. I will. Queenie, allow us to do it together. 2 demon women cried in response. It seemed Elizabeth's goal was not to destroy the Mountain Sea Pass, but the Skynet. The task of demolishing the Mountain Sea Pass was assigned to the demon women of the Divine Lair. A sharp swishing noise cut through the air. Queenie swiftly grabbed the air before her, taking hold of the invisibility curtain. With a nonchalant wave of her hand, the 5-colored light curtain enveloped 3 corpse spirit sun crows. They disappeared instantaneously. The size of the corpse spirit sun crows took up much space though, so their sudden disappearance easily attracted Zen's attention. Zen waved his hands beside him, drawing out some of the flying swords and sent them hurtling towards the seemingly empty air. As they neared the space, there were several harsh clanking sounds. The swords had encountered some kind of resistance. Zen's expression did not change despite his irritation. The 10 divine megatons of force could obviously easily kill the fragile sun crows, but this was different. The corpse spirit sun crows were massive, and not ordinary in any way. Assemble! Swords cut through the air with loud whooshing noises. The swords were starting to merge, and as they combined they could contain more and more strength. 5,000 divine megatons of force. Zen called. One of the swords finally pierced through the false void. Unfortunately, there was another harsh, metallic clang. The sword had met yet another barrier, and spun away from the void. There was a brief flicker of surprise on Zen's face. The defensive power of the corpse spirit sun crows far exceeded his expectations. 8,000 divine megatons of force. He snarled. The spiraling sword corrected itself, and once more zipped towards the void at alarming speed. Another sharp clang. The sound echoed in his ears as the sword spun away erratically. 15,000 divine megatons of force. He yelled, his voice shaking. Zen stopped releasing power to a majority of flying swords, and then forced all the power into a long sword and sent it towards the void once more. A crack was heard. The sword had finally pierced through an object in the void, but it seemed to have only made it half a foot. Although he was elated that the sword had gotten through, he was still shocked to learn it didn't go any farther. With a clenched fist, he released the power within the sword. How troublesome, he grumbled to himself. The power of the corpse spirit sun crows was far beyond his expectations. How troublesome is it, exactly? Basil asked in confusion. He had heard Zen's softly spoken words. Zen pointed ahead and said, take a look. The 3 corpse spirit sun crows that had been hiding were now slowly descending as the invisibility curtain was taken away by Queenie. The mouths of the now visible massive creatures were alight with blue flames. Chapter 3224, The Power of the Flames. The strong azure flames burned brightly as they gave off a striking aura. Even so, Zen had already expected such a thing when he had attacked the corpse spirit sun crows. The moment he saw that the corpse spirit sun crows were about to spit flames, he immediately shouted, everyone, get out of here. Then, he quickly rushed to the far right side of the position. Fortunately, Basil was also quick to react. As soon as Zen finished speaking, he sped up and moved to the right as well. The other Oneness generals also followed suit and dodged to the side in pairs. However, 2 Oneness generals in a position behind Sinclair panicked and dashed towards the opposite directions. As a result, their position didn't move with either of them. When one of them realized what happened, he ran to the other side and 3 corpse spirit sun crows spat out fire in return. Hiss, hiss, hiss. In the blink of an eye, 3 blue flames with mysterious sparks were shot forward and swallowed the position in an instant. The two Oneness generals stood in the position, and as they looked at the blue flames that were heading towards them, they thought of leaving things to chance. Perhaps the blue flames from the corpse spirit sun crows were not that powerful. Unfortunately, they would soon realize that they were very wrong. Crack, 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 crack. At that moment, the array of the mountain sea pass, the positions that protected Zen, Sinclair, and the others, and the transparent long swords they had formed all shattered into pieces. What was worse was that the people who guarded the main array had no time to stabilize it with more divine crystals. Furthermore, the two Oneness generals who faced the blue flames were burnt to ashes and vanished without a trace when their position was broken. Meanwhile, the blue flames continued to fly forward, but they did not hit the mountain sea pass. That was because the Skynet had appeared and blocked the flames when they were about to approach the mountain sea pass. Although the corpse spirit sun crows were powerful, they couldn't tear the Skynet apart with only a few flames from their mouths. "Sisters, I'll leave the rest to you. I'll deal with that guy," Queenie said as a coquettish red light flashed in her eyes. Since Zen had almost killed her just now, she naturally wanted to take revenge and kill him herself. Swoosh. The second she finished speaking, the invisibility curtain in her hand spread in the air, and then she and a corpse spirit sun crow completely disappeared. The mountain sea pass was damaged, and the shattered array couldn't protect Sinclair and the other Oneness generals anymore. Now, they had no room to retreat. In the end, the Oneness guards and the other Shore Realm warriors in the mountain sea pass ran outside the Skynet and fought against the enemy. Since they were Oneness generals, they also couldn't retreat to the Skynet. Moreover, the Skynet was not omnipotent. Once it collapsed, they would still have to face the Sun Crows. As soon as Zen saw that Queenie and the corpse spirit Sun Crow disappeared, he became more vigilant. He began to fly backward, a long sword in his hand. 9 flashlight splitting swordsmanship, he shouted. Swish, swish, swish. In turn, streaks of sword light swiftly formed a net and advanced forward. The corpse spirit Sun Crow's defense power was quite strong, so he didn't expect the golden light to injure it. In the next second, the net-shaped sword light cut across the corpse spirit Sun Crow's body with a muffled sound. Just like he had guessed, Queenie had driven the corpse spirit Sun Crow to try to attack him. Even though the corpse spirit Sun Crow was gone, the sword net still drew its shape. "Kill him," Queenie, who stood on the back of the corpse spirit Sun Crow, ordered in a cold voice. Despite Zen having injured her, she still didn't think that he was a powerful being. Instead, she believed that he defeated her with the array of the mountain sea pass. Swoosh. A strong gust of wind blew as the corpse spirit Sun Crow circled in the air, its wide wings like thick blades that slashed towards Zen. In return, he relied on the continuous sword radiance as the corpse spirit Sun Crow continued to assault him. He took a slight step back and suddenly jumped backward, and successfully avoided the wing's attack. Crack, crack, crack. Just as he had dodged, several deep and wide cuts appeared on the ground. Zen was shocked to see those cuts the corpse spirit Sun Crow had made, but he didn't show it. The corpse spirit Sun Crow seemed to have no intelligence, so it couldn't possibly cultivate, let alone enter the other shore. Therefore, how did it release so many divine megatons of force? Crack, crack, crack. Just as he thought about it, the corpse spirit Sun Crow launched a series of attacks once again, so he quickly dodged and slashed with the sword radiance in response. After he had blocked about 6 strikes in a row, Queenie's beautiful eyes narrowed into slits, and then she flapped her wings and left the corpse spirit Sun Crow. It wasn't long before she had quietly passed through the net of sword radiance and was now near Zen. Clap, clap. When she finally landed, she stretched out her hands and quickly patted Zen on the shoulder 2 times. The seemingly gentle pat left 2 lock-shaped marks on Zen's shoulder. Right after the lock-shaped marks appeared, he felt his arms and legs become incomparably heavy. It turned out that his limbs were fixed in place and he couldn't move at all. "You are dead," Queenie whispered with a smile. Then, she turned around and did not look back. Not far away was the hidden corpse spirit Sun Crow, which finally showed up. Its mouth spurted out blue flames as it passed by Queenie and headed straight towards Zen. Whoosh. Alas, Zen failed to dodge. The blue flames had hit him and devoured his entire body. Queenie's wings flapped as she looked down from the air, her eyes filled with pride. The blue flames that the corpse spirit Sun Crow spat out was also a kind of divine flame of the Sun Crow race. The Sun Crow race classified their flames, and one of the deadliest flames among them was the corpse spirit Sun Crow's, which was only inferior to Emperor Charms. As an Oneness general, Zen was quick to react, but he would die as the flames had hit him. The whole battlefield was in chaos, but the light of the blue flames still attracted some people's attention. Even Sinclair, who was busy killing the sun crows, froze when he saw the scene. He sighed a little and looked away. Of course, he thought that Zen was an outstanding young man. After all, Zen had just left the land of sword grief, yet he had displayed such strength. It was rare to see a talent like him, so it was a pity that he died like that. Basil, Guzman, and the others were also shocked, but they couldn't think too much as they were in the middle of a fight. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The blue flames continued to burn Zen's body for over 30 seconds, but he simply stood still. After a while, golden spirals materialized on his body and absorbed the flames. The situation wasn't new to him as he intentionally or even unintentionally let various kinds of flames burn him all the time. Most of the time, however, those flames did not have much effect on him. He had taken the test of the god of fire, known as Zhurong, back in the creation myth temple, but sadly that was only an illusion the primeval Lord of Heaven had made. Thus, it didn't benefit his physical body at all. Chapter 3225, Control the Corpse Spirit Sun Crow. Although at first intimidated by the blue flame's strength, Zen didn't think that it could harm him in any way. Just as the corpse spirit Sun Crow stopped spewing out flames, Zen abruptly jumped up to rush towards Queenie. Queenie, who thought that Zen died, had shifted and fixed her gaze on another oneness general. Just as she flapped her wings to return to and mount the corpse spirit Sun Crow, Zen had unexpectedly pounced on her. Queenie was caught off guard. She never expected Zen to return safely from the blue flames. The look of astonishment on her face froze as Zen's long sword pierced right through her chest. At that point, her chaotic source spirits had managed to restore to just 30% of their original power after Zen had consumed it earlier. That meant his sword was only met with slight resistance before it successfully pierced her through the chest. I thought the fire killed you, Queenie stuttered in confusion with whatever remaining strength she had. Well, you thought wrong, Zen replied. Whoosh. Upon finishing his sentence, he suddenly withdrew his long sword from her chest before wielding and slashing it to split her into two. Now that he had successfully slaughtered Queenie, Zen returned his gaze to the corpse spirit Sun Crow. Because it no longer had a master to order it around, the beast appeared lost and clueless as to what its next move should be. The corpse spirit Sun Crow was like a puppet, useless without a master controlling it. As Zen thought it through, he suddenly remembered the human race's civilization artifact. Apart from the primeval Lord of Heaven's energy soul, there was also Emperor Charm's energy soul in that civilization artifact. Although these energy souls weren't their real bodies, they still possessed and retained their memories and auras. As he was casually wiping out dozens of approaching sun crows, another thought flashed through Zen's inner world and called out to the primeval Lord of Heaven. His inner world had undergone tremendous change ever since carrying the human race's civilization artifact. All of this was caused by the primeval Lord of Heaven and other energy souls that had been carrying out experiments on his inner world. The successful integration of the civilization artifact into Zen's body meant that he trusted them. During this period of transformation, even the regal jade spirit often followed the primeval Lord of Heaven and kept asking numerous questions. The primeval Lord of Heaven raised his brows after learning Zen's encounters and thoughts in his inner world. He then pointed a finger to the book in the air. After a few pages were turned, a handsome man appeared. It was none other than Emperor Charm. What? Corpse spirit Sun Crow? The Emperor's face appeared shocked. Although my avatar betrayed the finale way, he is able now. He's even summoned the corpse spirit Sun Crows. Emperor Charm, are you able to control them? Zen's question rang in his inner world. It'll be a piece of cake, Emperor Charm assured Zen. Soon, the shadow of the book materialized above Zen's head. The outline of Emperor Charm's head stretched out from the pages. With the help of the civilization artifact, Emperor Charm began to get a glimpse of the world over 1,000 chaotic eras later. What he witnessed truly vexed him. The sun crows, blocking the sun and sky with their massive wings, fought with the humans. This stirred up some unhappy memories he had kept. Emperor Charm, I'm talking about that corpse spirit Sun Crow, Zen explained and pointed towards the large bird ahead. The other demon women were locked in combat with the oneness generals, and so none of them took heed of Zen. You can mount it, Emperor Charm said. Without saying a word, Zen jumped onto corpse spirit Sun Crow's back. Immediately, a strange yet familiar feeling came over him. He realized that not only could he control the beast, he could also control the other shore token that was embedded in its body as well. This corpse spirit Sun Crow has quite an unusual other shore token. The token the bird carried within it was shaped like a spindle similar to a fruit core. It's considered an other shore treasure, Emperor Charm informed nonchalantly. It's the demonic star fruit. Only about 100 in total exist. I only placed them in stage 31. Unexpectedly, another me had found them. The other shore treasure in the source world could carry the other shore token. But most of the other shore treasures weren't strong enough to carry other shore tokens in higher level due to their limited strength. The demonic star fruits had many divine megatons of force, and how did the corpse spirit sun crows carry them? Getting to the bottom of that matter would have to wait. Now, Zen stood on top of the corpse spirit sun crow he mounted and gazed at the other sun crows that were located not too far away. A thought then flashed through his mind. The corpse spirit sun crow beneath his feet opened its mouth and from deep within it burst brilliant blue flames. Whoosh! How powerful were the blue flames, exactly? So powerful that they had reduced the ordinary sun crows to nothing but ashes. This way, left, burn them now, whoosh. Under Zen's control, the corpse spirit sun crow constantly spewed out blue flames in all directions and burned thousands of sun crows to ashes. Not far away, Jago and the other warriors at the other shore realm were running wildly. Normally, it wouldn't be difficult for a oneness general and a 5-star oneness guard to kill the sun crows. However, with the strength of Jago and his peers, they could do nothing but escape in the face of thousands of sun crows. Those sharp-winged sun crows are rushing down. Everyone, get down. At this order, everyone in the group lowered themselves to the ground as quickly as possible. Soon, the sharp-winged sun crows began to rain down on them like lightning bolts during a heavy storm. Reflexively, Jago lay on the ground with his body huddled up, trembling with fear. He had no chance of fighting these vicious beasts at all. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The whistle of the sharp-winged sun crows slicing the air was followed by the deaths of dozens of people, many of them with their stomachs sliced wide open. Hot blood splashed onto Jago's face. More than half of the 300 people who made up the group were slaughtered in this single attack alone. I'll slaughter them even if it means death. One terrified man exclaimed as he prepared to activate his other shore token. Unfortunately, other shore tokens that originated from Stage 2 or Stage 3 couldn't work in this kind of battles at all. Using it against the swift sharp-winged sun crows would be useless. Before that man could activate his other shore token, one of the sharp-winged sun crows swooped down and slashed his neck. He was beheaded before he even got the chance to cry out. Jago felt nothing but utter hopelessness as he witnessed his comrades drop dead all around him. How can Flag Master survive this? Jago's mind went blank as he realized he'd be unable to protect himself now. But he still clung to the hope that Zen would be able to save him. Although at this point, it seemed quite impossible. Swoosh! A sudden wave of heat passed over his face. All he saw above him was a brilliant blue flame before an enormous sun crow landed beside him. Come on up. Zen beckoned from the back of a corpse spirit sun crow. Blinking his eyes, Jago could hardly understand what was happening in front of him. Chapter 3226, Grabbing. Jago had been staring at Zen with his eyes wide open for a few seconds. After a while, he was jolted back to his senses by his desire to live. As soon as he had lifted himself off the ground, he bolted straight towards the corpse spirit sun crow and jumped on its back. Flag Master, forgive my ignorance. But why are you able to command the sun crow? Jago looked thoroughly awestruck as he asked Zen. It went without saying that he knew how terrifying a corpse spirit sun crow was. It seemed incredulous that Zen was able to control it. The corpse spirit sun crows were enormous. Moreover, they were aggressively assaulting the sky net above. The warriors of the other shore realm as well as the oneness guards were not even qualified to be the opponents of these magnificent and powerful corpse spirit sun crows. Zen remained standing straight on the back of the corpse spirit sun crow. He was controlling it to spew out blue flames constantly. As he heard Jago's question, he seemed amused. You can do the same, he replied calmly. What? That can't be right. Jago was utterly bewildered at Zen's answer. Meanwhile, the corpse spirit sun crow flapped its massive wings splendidly and swiftly soared forward. Most of the corpse spirit sun crows had already gathered above. They charged fearlessly towards the sky net as commanded by Elizabeth. There were only a few corpse spirit sun crows left to deal with the oneness generals inside the mountain sea pass. Wow, that looks terrifying, Jago exclaimed as he observed their movements. All of a sudden, a stream of blue flame hurtled down from the sky. It narrowly missed Sinclair as he rolled on the ground to dodge it. However, the heat of the flames had singed his hair. He had the protection of the chaotic source spirits to thank. Without it, his body would have been badly burned by that attack. As he was dodging the flames from above and on the ground, Sinclair brandished his long sword and slashed 3 times towards the direction of the sky. Swoosh, 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 3 consecutive punishment slashes. Sinclair shouted at the top of his lungs. 3 rays of sword radiance broke through the air. They dragged the traces of countless space cracks and slashed at the corpse spirit sun crow above. Surprisingly, the corpse spirit sun crow didn't dodge his attack at all. It seemed like it wasn't taking Sinclair's 3 slashes seriously. Puff, puff, puff. The theurgy of swordsmanship that Sinclair cultivated was an extremely offensive technique. However, the sword radiance didn't even damage the feather of the corpse spirit sun crow as his attack landed. Unbelievable. These corpse spirit sun crows really are too strong. I can't stand against them. As Sinclair admitted this, a look of complete disappointment registered on his face. When he was guarding the Mountain Sea Pass, he was very much aware of the fact that he would have to fight to the death. There were so many of his companions that had met their demise in the Grand River Fortress. He was very lucky to have been able to escape and survive this long. He thought it was enough for him to have lived for more days than his companions. As he thought of this, his fighting spirit declined significantly. He felt quite hopeless and dejected now. However, he was still fighting. What a foolish human. You will end up the same way as your companions no matter how much you struggle. Give up now. A demon woman mocked and taunted Sinclair as she stood on the back of the corpse spirit sun crow. The corpse spirit sun crow opened its huge beak once more and spat out blue flames towards Sinclair. Sinclair was now facing death as a stream of flames shot towards him from above. He didn't have any option left other than to escape and run away once more. Swoosh. At that very moment, Sinclair spotted another huge shadow sweeping past the corner of his eyes. What rotten luck. Here comes another corpse spirit sun crow. It's such a waste of energy for such powerful existences to deal with me, a mere oneness general. Alas. Sinclair sighed deeply. He was starting to accept that he would most probably lose his life here. He couldn't even stand a chance against one corpse spirit sun crow. One was already more than enough to kill him, let alone 2 of those powerful beings. The demon woman of the divine lair who stood on the back of the corpse spirit sun crow was also surprised to see another one of these creatures. She thought she would be able to dispose of the oneness general with ease. Therefore, she didn't need anyone else to interfere. However, she noticed that the other corpse spirit sun crow was soaring at her direction at an extremely fast speed. It showed no sign of slowing down. Soon enough, the demon woman finally realized that something wasn't quite right. It was too late. She didn't have any time to redirect her corpse spirit sun crow out of the way. The other corpse spirit sun crow was flying so fast towards her that she wouldn't be able to dodge the attack. Moreover, she couldn't quite see who was controlling it. She only saw a manly figure dismounting the other corpse spirit sun crow and rushing in front of her at lightning speed. Oh, no, she only had one choice now. The demon woman left her mount without the slightest hesitation. But as soon as she dismounted and flew upwards, the corpse spirit sun crow on the opposite instantly raised its massive wings and slashed at her from a very suitable height. Puff! The wings of the corpse spirit sun crow were extraordinarily strong. Even Zen could hardly withstand their attack. In the blink of an eye, the demon woman was chopped into pieces. Zen soared towards the corpse spirit sun crow and resumed his position on its back. He turned around and smiled at Jago. I told you you could do it too. What Zen told him was true. It was not that difficult to control a corpse spirit sun crow. Jago was able to enter the other shore realm. Thus, it meant the strength of his soul was more than enough to command it. When they went over to where the second corpse spirit sun crow was, Jago was the one who controlled the first one. Zen just frightened the demon woman enough to make her leave her mount. In this way, they got the corpse spirit sun crow very easily. Incredible, I can control it too, Jago exclaimed excitedly. Never in his wildest dreams did it occur that he would be able to take control of such a powerful and magnificent existence. While he was pondering on this newfound ability, the corpse spirit sun crow under his feet suddenly spurted blue flames towards the distance. They effectively burned thousands of sun crows to ashes. Below them, Sinclair couldn't believe his eyes. He was completely dumbfounded when he saw Zen grab a corpse spirit sun crow with such ease. Putting aside Zen's peculiar means, he knew it was impossible to take hold of corpse spirit sun crows. These were known as powerful weapons used by the sun crow race. However, Zen was able to put the corpse spirit sun crow under his control as soon as he gently leapt on its back. It was simply unbelievable. As Zen stepped lightly on the back of the corpse spirit sun crow, it descended to the ground smoothly. General Sinclair, please get on. He smiled encouragingly. I can get on it too. Incredible. Sinclair felt completely flattered and amazed. Of course, come with me and let's grab another corpse spirit sun crow. Zen replied graciously. When they launched a broad attack, Queenie ordered 3 corpse spirit sun crows to target the Mountain Sea Pass. Now, there was only one corpse spirit Sun Crow chasing the other oneness generals in the Mountain Sea Pass. As soon as Sinclair stepped on the back of one, the two corpse spirit Sun Crows flew upwards once again. They soared high up in the sky towards the other Sun Crows. Nearly 100 corpse spirit Sun Crows were spurting out blue flames simultaneously. The swirling flames poured onto the sky net above. The defensive power of the sky net arrays should not be underestimated. It was highly regarded as one of the most powerful skills of the Oneness Sky Palace. No matter how wildly the blue flame burned, the sky net remained unmoved and unharmed. The blue light of the flames shone on Elizabeth's face. Her beautiful eyes were full of confident calmness. She believed that no matter how tough the sky net was, it would eventually collapse. If they continued to burn it like this, it would only be a matter of time before they broke through it. Once the sky net array was broken, the Sun Crow race would charge forward. Then, they would launch an all-out attack. Elizabeth thought that as long as she attacked the sky net, all the powerful warriors in the Seven Mountains would be drawn out. She had commanded the corpse spirit Sun Crows to burn the sky net for quite a while now. However, the strong warriors in the Seven Mountains still did not take any action. It was only the Oneness Guards and the Oneness Generals stationed in the 12 passes that rushed out of the sky net and fought with the Sun Crows. After the blue flames had continued burning the sky net for 5 minutes, streaks of sword light shot into the sky from behind it. Well, so you finally lose your cool. Elizabeth's mouth curled into a taunting smile. Impressive, she remarked as she observed the streaks of sword light. 100,000 feet long ray of sword radiance unfolded from afar. It seemed to be able to cut the sky in halves as it passed through the sky net without resistance. Moreover, it accurately slashed toward Elizabeth's direction. Elizabeth remained sitting upright on the back of a corpse spirit Sun Crow. It was as though she was merely sitting on a small boat that was moving with the tide. She gently swayed to the side to avoid the sword radiance. Just like Elizabeth, the other corpse spirit Sun Crows hovering in front of her easily avoided the sword radiance. It seemed like they were not in the same space at all. Chapter 3227, My Words Carry No Weight. It was the leader of the Golden Mountain. When the sword radiance missed completely, the look on the leader's face did not flinch or change a bit. Instead, he raised his golden sword horizontally, and the roaring noises of dragons and tigers echoed from the blade of the sword. With his other hand, he pinched the sword and suddenly slashed out the golden sword. There were flames of fury behind his eyes. Swish, swish, just then, the huge sword radiance roared away once again. Meanwhile, the leaders of the other 6 mountains waited patiently for orders from the Oneness Mountain. They made sure to never leave the arrays that they were guarding. Though the attack was powerful, it remained a challenge to hurt Elizabeth or any of the corpse spirit Sun Crows. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After the leader of the Golden Mountain finally made his move, a violent wind rushed out from the other side. Apparently, countless swords were hidden in the wind, and this same wind swept away, taking the corpse spirit Sun Crows and Elizabeth with it. Destroy, the Azure Mountain's leader declared. Crack, crack, the forceful gusts of wind released bolts of lightning that exploded in all directions. Elizabeth sat firmly and calmly on the back of a corpse spirit Sun Crow. The corners of her mouth lifted up into a smile. It seems that these old men don't even dare to come out. Are they just going to test it like this? As soon as she finished speaking, snake-shaped sword shadows began to approach her. These shadows created gray marks in the air, and multiplied dramatically over time. This was the move from the Bright Mountain, and it could cross spaces in order to hit its targets. Because Elizabeth relied on a spatial magic treasure, she and the corpse spirit Sun Crows could easily avoid the attacks aimed at them. The leader of the Bright Mountain only hoped that the snake-shaped sword shadows would be able to hit her. However, though the shadows continued to spread out, they could not get to Elizabeth. Swish, right before Elizabeth, an intense purple light shot up from the ground and pierced the sky. Afterwards, it descended and landed right above her head. It was a very long purple sword. Boom, when the purple sword landed, it did not cause any pain to Elizabeth. Rather, it brought out a purple glow that spread throughout the sky. Elizabeth took a look at the purple glow, growing a mocking smile at their vain attacks. The Vastness Mountain had already become a chess piece of Emperor charm. What was ironic was that they still had to act otherwise before the other 6 mountains. It was standard that the 7 mountains used their own methods to attack behind the sky net. However, this was a tentative attack, and it was close to nothing. Meanwhile, a number of warriors stood on the lofty swords in the Oneness array, trying to discuss what happened and what to do next. Are we going to start? Auden asked the group. Pierce's eyes squinted, trying to focus on what was happening so far away. I think we should wait a little longer. But being burned by the corpse spirit sun crows, the Skynet won't hold on for long, said Auden. Among all the powerful swordsmen present, Auden had the highest attainments in arrays. He had also participated in the establishment of the Skynet in the first place. He knew that although the Skynet was sturdy, it could never endure continuous powerful attacks. What's more, the Oneness generals have already suffered a great loss, said Athamar, who was next to Auden. In battle, all the elites of the Oneness Sky Palace had been used to their limit. If the Oneness generals, the Oneness guards and the disciples of the Land of Sword Grief were killed, it would be a loss that the warriors of the various sword sects grieved. Everyone who was there could resonate with Pierce's worry. As for their opponents, the Sun Crow race, only Elizabeth led a group to join the battle. Elizabeth's strength was actually on the same level with that of Athamar and the rest. While the corpse spirit Sun Crows were powerful, they were like puppets who lacked intelligence. Therefore, it would be impossible for those corpse spirit Sun Crows to break through the defense line of the Oneness Sky Palace. But since Elizabeth was so calm, she must have a powerful backup. Still unwilling to take any action, Pierce had some misgivings. He hesitated, then reached out for a communication token. Master Gentry, can you lead the Golden Mountain to attack first? If they exerted all the strength of a mountain, there was no way Elizabeth and the corpse spirit Sun Crows could resist. Then they would have to show their trump cards. Only after Pierce figured out her trump card, could he lead the Oneness Sky Palace to deal with her. That was the only chance. If the mountain leaders were all killed, the remaining warriors in the Seven Mountains wouldn't be able to protect the Oneness Sky Palace for long. They would be doomed to lose. I will follow your orders, but the Seven Mountains are connected and we should fight back together, the leader of the Golden Mountain spoke. If the Golden Mountain takes the lead, I'm afraid it will make my people. It came to a point that anyone knew whoever took lead would end up dead. If he led his men towards the battle, there was no way they would survive. Even though the members of the Golden Mountain were not afraid of death, they never would have sacrificed in this way. Besides, Pierce's order couldn't make them obey fully. Gentry's words were transmitted to Auden and Athamar, who looked at each other and sighed in disappointment. Once again, Pierce held the communication token and begged the Ivory Mountain to make a move. However, like the leader of the Golden Mountain, the leader of the Ivory Mountain declined as well. Token after token, Pierce asked the leaders of mountains but received all the same refusal. After going through each mountain leader only to be declined, Pierce crushed the communication token in his hand and shook his head. I have to admit that my words carry no weight as I'm in a low position. I cannot represent Eastern Emperor Tai. He figured that if Eastern Emperor Tai led the battle, no mountain could disobey him. There would be no reason for them to refuse to spearhead the attack. Although Pierce and Auden were the elders of the Oneness Sky Palace, they were no match for Eastern Emperor Tai. The mountain leaders would not be driven by Pierce, who was weaker and less important than them. Elder Pierce, I'll go up with Goran. Athamar volunteered enthusiastically. Goran also cupped his hands in agreement, his eyes flashing with a fierce determination to get it done. I'm afraid you two are not enough, Pierce said. If you go up like this, you'd die, Pierce said, shaking his head. Then I'm in, said Master Hai, who hadn't spoken a word the whole time. I've lived long enough, count me in, Auden added, smiling. And me, Elder Pierce, me, seeing all the willingness of them, Pierce couldn't help but smile. Among the 7 arrays guarded by 7 mountains, the Oneness array is the most important, he announced. If you all go up, that would leave me to preside over this array alone. Everyone grew silent, and Goran gritted his teeth hearing this. The Sun Crow's orderly advance really placed the Oneness Sky Palace in a dilemma that left them close to hopeless. Suddenly, Athamar looked into the distance and spotted something odd. Look, what's that? Oddly enough, more than 100 corpse spirit Sun Crows soared gracefully in the air, but there seemed to be 3 corpse spirit Sun Crows circling below them. These 3 crows spewed out blue flames at their own members. Chapter 3228, Robber. Zen originally made the corpse spirit Sun Crow under his feet fly close to the ground. But after grabbing the third one, he had risen to a higher altitude. Sinclair and Jago controlled the other 2. While Jago had a rather low cultivation level, he was superior to Sinclair when it came to controlling the corpse spirit Sun Crow. Upon Athamar's reminder, everyone on the lofty swords turned to the corpse spirit Sun Crows. Pierce's pupils contracted until a triangular mirror appeared in their depths. Even if the corpse spirit Sun Crows were over 100 miles away, he could see every detail on them as clear as day. His wrinkled face was dumbfounded at what he saw. And he wasn't the only one stunned frozen. Auden was struck with astonishment when he saw Zen flying atop the back of a corpse spirit sun crow as it spat out blue flames. Meanwhile, Athamar, Goran, and the rest used their own methods to observe. Some used their spiritual senses, while others used their eyesight, but all of them wore bewildered expressions. The sight had them shocked, speechless, and confused. Those three men snatched away the corpse spirit sun crows. Eventually, Pierce couldn't stop himself from asking. It seems so. Goran nodded. How is this possible? The corpse spirit sun crows were nurtured by Emperor Charm with great effort. How could he have the qualifications to attack the North Unicorn province if they could be taken away so easily? Said one of the Oneness governors, shaking his head. Even if he had seen it with his own 2 eyes, he couldn't believe it. If the corpse spirit sun crows could be snatched away so easily, Emperor Charm had no power to fight with the Oneness Sky Palace. He must have set many restrictions on the powerful puppets. Zen and Sinclair were merely Oneness generals. Even if Eastern Emperor Tai came in person, he could only crush the crows to dust. He wouldn't have been able to snatch them away. Who took the 3 crows? Was it Sinclair? Asked another Oneness governor. Among the Oneness generals, Sinclair was considered a veteran. If he further improved his strength, he'd easily gain the qualifications to become a Oneness governor. Because of the fact, most of them thought it was him doing the miracle. It must be Zen, Athamar said with a smile. It seemed he had put aside all his previous worries. I think so, too, Goran said, nodding in agreement. Doing such a thing was not a matter of strength. Even Athamar himself couldn't do it. Besides, Athamar and Goran were well aware that Zen was much stronger than Sinclair. All the while, Pierce remained silent. Suddenly, a glimmer of hope sparked in his heart. He was hoping Zen and the two could beat the current deadlock. The corpse spirit sun crow that Zen was controlling suddenly flew up at high speed. His body was nearly completely vertical. Initially, he had planned to use the corpse spirit sun crow to kill more of the ordinary ones, but the sun crows came at him overwhelmingly. There was no way to kill them all. What turned out most crucial, though, was that they were attacking the Skynet. In this war with the Sun Crow race, Zen wasn't a key figure, nor did he know much about the plans set by the Oneness Sky Palace's senior leaders. All he knew was that if the Skynet was broken, the situation would turn out much worse. Emperor Charm, you can control the corpse spirit sun crows without touching them. Am I right? Zen asked. Before he could snatch the first 2 crows, he had to get close enough to them. When he tried to snatch the third, the demon woman from the divine lair was thrown right off by the crow, letting Emperor Charm control it from far away. Yes, replied Emperor Charm. But the premise is that there are no demon women from the divine lair on the corpse spirit sun crows. Zen was overjoyed to hear the fact. Can you control the ones above? Over 100 corpse spirit sun crows were flying above, but only 20 of them had demon women riding on their backs. If they managed to get all the crows, even a typically calm man like Zen wouldn't be able to hide his excitement. Of course, get closer, Emperor Charm said plainly in return. In truth, Emperor Charm was rather disappointed in the Sun Crow race. Everything they were doing went against his original goal of sowing the seeds. Whoosh! From beneath Zen's feet, the corpse spirit Sun Crow suddenly quickened and dashed upward. Elizabeth sat on the back of the topmost corpse spirit Sun Crow. She stared blankly ahead, expecting the Oneness Sky Palace people to rush out upon their arrival. She figured they wouldn't bear to watch the Skynet collapse. The interesting part of the show was yet to come, and Elizabeth was looking forward to watching the restless, helpless expressions of the people there. But at that moment, she suddenly felt something quickly approaching. She looked down to find a corpse spirit Sun Crow. Are they back? When the general offensive was launched, Queenie had led another 2 women to capture the Mountain Sea Pass. It was about time they returned. But why was the corpse spirit Sun Crow flying at such a high speed? A strange feeling of anger rose within Elizabeth. Just as she was about to scold the one on the back of the corpse spirit Sun Crow, her beautiful eyes suddenly began trembling as she saw Zen. She was already very familiar with this man. In their first encounter, she had failed to kill him. In their second encounter in the chaotic source world, she had almost lost all the demon women because of him. In their third encounter on the other shore, her loss was even more miserable. She had to give up stage 14 to Zen. This time, he even managed to snatch the corpse spirit Sun Crows. Now, Zen's innocent face terrified Elizabeth. His calm demeanor was more like the calm before a storm. It was like a nightmare to Elizabeth as she felt all her power shrink to nothing. The man who was supposed to be not worth even mentioning could crush her to death effortlessly. Master Elizabeth, how did a human snatch the corpse spirit Sun Crow? He's approaching with one. Many of the demon women riding the crows had also noticed Zen's arrival. All of you, go catch him. Elizabeth ordered urgently, gritting her teeth. If it was anyone else, she would have killed him immediately. But Zen was important, he had to be caught alive. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The demon women then dashed downward. In the distance, Athamar, Pierce, and the rest closely watched the front. Seeing the demon women descend one after another, Athamar couldn't help but say, "It's too dangerous." "What does Zen want to do? Should we do something?" Goran asked. But Pierce reached out his hand to stop him. Although he was also worried, he had the instinct to take the risks. Hold on, he must be rushing up like this for a reason. Chapter 3229, Rushing into the Flames. Over 100 corpse spirit sun crows were scattered above Zen. "Is it okay, Emperor Charm?" Zen asked just as he was about 1,000 feet away from the corpse spirit sun crows at the bottom. Emperor Charm nodded. Yes. Green light flashed in the Emperor's slender eyes and Zen began to feel something press onto his mind. Buzz. 7 or 8 corpse spirit sun crows at the bottom looked down as a trace of green light also flashed in their eyes. Zen felt the existence of these corpse spirit sun crows within his mind just as the connection was made. Zen's eyes widened in wonder. It's done. He continued to fly towards the higher layer where there were more than 10 corpse spirit sun crows waiting. Zen noticed how they had to maintain a certain amount of distance between them owing to their incredibly huge sizes. This time, before he even started to make a request to Emperor Charm, the eyes of these corpse spirit sun crows flashed green and their consciousness connected with his mind. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At that moment, sharp, whistling sounds came from high above. More than 20 divine lair women were quickly descending on the corpse spirit sun crows and their target was obvious, Zen. It wasn't a problem for him to kill 1 or 2 divine lair women given his strength, but it was a rather different story if there were more than 20 of them. Descend. Zen heard Emperor Charm's voice echo in his head. Even without this reminder, Zen wasn't willing to continue his ascent. As he descended, Zen noticed that the sun crows commanded by Emperor Charm remained in the air in their original positions. They even continued spitting out their blue flames. The divine lair women who were hot at his tail were none the wiser and simply ignored these corpse spirit sun crows. They did not notice any abnormality whatsoever and continued to chase solely after Zen. Catch him. Don't let him escape back to the Skynet. You think we'll let you go this time? We'll definitely catch you. These demon women that chased after Zen were all elites in the divine lair. Their individual strength could easily suppress an outstanding oneness Sky Palace warrior. There was really no need to send so many people after someone like Zen, and all his pursuers were confident that they'd be able to catch him even with their eyes closed. Elizabeth watched the spectacle from high above as she sat on the back of a corpse spirit sun crow. These corpse spirit sun crows were all controlled by her and she suddenly felt the loss of her connection with the ones below. There was no way someone could have severed her connection with these corpse spirit sun crows. Her power over them was absolute, unless Emperor Charm was involved. To think that something like this could happen. Though they continued to spit out blue flames, Elizabeth couldn't help the apprehension that rose to her chest as she looked down at the corpse spirit sun crows below. This, she muttered through gritted teeth. It was supposed to be impossible, but she couldn't deny that her control over them had been entirely severed. Dang it, come back, all of you, she shouted. Her voice instantly spread to the minds of all the demon women that pursued Zen. These divine lair women were all created by Elizabeth and they obeyed her completely. With her command, they ceased their pursuit and ordered their mounts to hover in the air. They were now on the same level as the corpse spirit sun crows controlled by Zen. It's time, Zen muttered to himself with a smile as he descended. His chance had come. The corpse spirit sun crows, who were continually spouting jets of blue flame, turned in unison. The blue flames were like sharp swords that came at the demon women. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. These flames were harmless to the other corpse spirit sun crows, but the same could not be said to the divine lair women. The moment the flames licked their bodies, their chaotic source spirits instantly fell into fatigue and they quickly turned to ashes. Those who were lucky enough to see this quickly reacted and abandoned the sun crows in an effort to escape. Unfortunately, there were more than 20 corpse spirit sun crows in the air and their flames scorched through everything. The divine lair women who tried to escape never stood a chance. Pierce, who was standing on top of the lofty sword 100 miles away, whooped, "Well done. Great job. He killed all those demon women whilst snatching away more than 20 corpse spirit sun crows. It's amazing. Amazing. It's truly amazing." Zen's feat was so astounding that Auden, Athamar, and Goran couldn't help but shower him with praises. Maybe, Pierce began as he looked at the scene in front of him in awe. Maybe what, Pierce? Maybe he can force the fellows hiding in the dark to appear. This was once an unrealistic hope, but now, Pierce couldn't help but feel that there might now be a possibility for this to happen. Meanwhile, in the vastness array. Why is Elizabeth so lame? Gethin asked. Elizabeth was considered as the most powerful figure in the divine lair of the Sun Crow race, and with so many powerful demon women with her, there was no excuse for her to have let Zen get away. Someone calculating like Gethin would naturally choose to be on the stronger side of the war. The scene he had just witnessed suddenly made him doubt the Sun Crow race's strength. That Zen is too cunning, Natasha muttered beside him. Maybe he used some sort of special method. When they had caught Zen back in the vastness mountain, she had been the one to interrogate him. His skills definitely left a deep impression on her. A group of warriors considerably stronger than him couldn't do anything to him at that time. Had Zen's strength grown to the point that he could now face off against Elizabeth? I swear I'll kill you today. Elizabeth snarled angrily at Zen. She had already forgotten her own duty. In her angered state, Elizabeth manipulated all the corpse spirit sun crows to spit their blue flames towards Zen. Facing the barrage of so many blue flames, even the mightiest warriors would choose to dodge. All eyes were on Zen at that moment. Zen, run. You've already stolen 20 corpse spirit sun crows. That's enough. It's too early for you to fight against Elizabeth. It should be easy for him to dodge while controlling his mount. Even the warriors of the Azure Mountain, the Bright Mountain, and the Ivory Mountain were paying close attention to him once they realized that he could determine the trend of this entire war. The Skynet had almost reached its limit and would not be able to withstand any more power. However, when the corpse spirit sun crows stopped releasing fire, it began to repair itself. As he faced the oncoming flames, Zen suddenly had a bold idea. How would you react if I took away all the corpse spirit sun crows? He did not command his mount to carry him to safety. Instead, he made it rush headfirst into the flames. In just a few moments, he, along with the corpse spirit sun crow, disappeared into the blue flames. Everyone was stunned into silence. Save for a small number of people who knew the truth about Zen, most people viewed his actions as suicide. What is he doing? Is he asking for death? He has no reason to do so. All the leaders of the 7 mountains along with all the powerful warriors in the 7 arrays could only look on in confusion. Chapter 3230, Run Away. Pierce and Auden had set a high expectation for Zen. Such an unrealistic expectation became the key to breaking the dilemma. However, things suddenly turned to a direction that the two of them found hard to accept. Did Zen really rush into the raging flames and commit suicide? There was nothing Pierce could do or say, except for the shocked twitch of his face. Naturally, Auden was very much taken aback as well. Both of them didn't know much about Zen. They had met Zen for the first time in the Supreme Dragon Hall, and their impressions of him weren't so great. They thought that Zen was extremely arrogant and even dared to refuse the marriage that Eastern Emperor Tai had arranged for him. On the other hand, Athamar and Goran knew Zen much better. For instance, Athamar knew that Zen wasn't afraid of the unearthly fire, but even Athamar himself didn't dare to touch the flames that the corpse spirit sun crows spat out. If that was the case, would Zen truly be safe? But of course, Zen was not a brainless person. Perhaps he was quite confident in his abilities, which was why he charged straight like that. Splash! Zen and his corpse spirit sun crow were bathed together in the blue flames, and as time passed, the distance between them and the other crows became closer. At that moment, a consciousness floated in Zen's mind. Emperor Charm. Is it okay? Emperor Charm's shadow nodded in response, and then his eyes flashed a ray of green light. To take control of the corpse spirit sun crows was a piece of cake for him. A few seconds later, the connections with the corpse spirit sun crows kept appearing in Zen's mind. On the contrary, Elizabeth was agitated. The remaining corpse spirit sun crows were originally under her control, but now they quickly disappeared from her mind one after another. He is still alive, she shouted angrily in despair. After a while, all the corpse spirit sun crows were finally under Zen's control except for the one she sat on. Splash! With just a thought, Zen made the corpse spirit sun crows stop spurting blue flames. His pure golden body came into everyone's sight once again. Below them was Sinclair, who looked up dumbfoundedly at the scene in the sky. He couldn't believe what just happened. Of course, he didn't know about the true fight between the Sun Crow race and the Oneness Sky Palace. He simply thought that the Sun Crow race's strongest weapons were the corpse spirit Sun Crows, and Zen alone had subdued such a formidable force. He had fought against the entire Sun Crow race alone. That kind of thing was more of an illusion than a dream. Nice to meet you again, Zen said with a smile. Needless to say, Elizabeth felt resentful and miserable. Her shoulders trembled slightly, she only wanted to tear Zen apart alive. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Just then, wisps of thin flames gently lit up along her body. She slightly shook her right hand, and then all the silky flames went up along her arms. The flames began to weave together like thin threads until they turned into a long, fiery spear. You are indeed an opponent that deserves my admiration, Elizabeth said as she held onto the flaming spear. I can give you a chance to challenge me, or even kill me. What do you think? Her voice had a trace of magic, which lured Zen to agree to the duel. Although Zen's cultivation level was lower than hers, he now controlled over 100 corpse spirit sun crows. In terms of combat strength, a corpse spirit sun crow was actually on par with Elizabeth. Thus, he had a great advantage this time. Now, Elizabeth had no choice. It was Emperor Charm who had ordered to break through the Skynet with the corpse spirit sun crows. The Oneness Sky Palace's two strongest and most troublesome fighters, Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasamine, were still under control on the other shore, but it seemed that even without them, the Oneness Sky Palace was still powerful after all. They would attract the siege of the Seven Mountains if they broke through the Skynet first. The Sun Crow race would wait for the leaders and strong warriors of the Seven Mountains to be exhausted and defeated if they did get out of the Skynet, before anything else. However, Zen had appeared so suddenly and took all the corpse spirit Sun Crows. Since everything had escalated to this point, Elizabeth could only deal with Zen first. Challenge you and kill you? Zen asked as he sat on the back of a Sun Crow. The other Sun Crows turned around and faced Elizabeth. If he ever thought about attacking her, they naturally would capture her. Yes, you've improved your strength every time I see you. Now it's time for you to fight me. What do you think? Said Elizabeth in a hazy voice. I'm interested, Zen answered attentively. The corners of Elizabeth's lips curled and she straightened her chest. Only by defeating Zen on her own could the plan go smoothly. The moment she thought that she now had her chance, Zen exclaimed, I changed my mind now. Swoosh. In the blink of an eye, the corpse spirit Sun Crow that he sat on flew towards the Skynet. After that, the other corpse spirit Sun Crows suddenly opened their mouths and spat out blue flames towards Elizabeth. Then, they spread their wings and followed behind Zen. When Pierce saw what happened, he was overjoyed. Hurry up, turn off the Skynet's restriction and let those corpse spirit Sun Crows in. He ordered. Generally speaking, the huge Skynet only allowed the people of the Oneness Sky Palace to come in and out. Therefore, the corpse spirit Sun Crows couldn't enter it, even though they were under Zen's control. Fortunately, the Oneness Sky Palace had intervened, and the Skynet was quickly adjusted. You want to escape? It's not that easy, Elizabeth hissed. Whoosh, she immediately made her corpse spirit Sun Crow avoid the blue flames and chase after Zen. The pair of fire wings on her back flapped, and then she dashed forward together with the corpse spirit Sun Crow. Her speed was more than twice as high as Zen's. As long as she could successfully catch him, she could intercept these corpse spirit Sun Crows. That was the only thought that ran through her mind. As soon as she got closer to him, she jumped up from the back of the corpse spirit Sun Crow. The tip of the flaming spear in her hand spun at high speed and let out an ear-piercing sound. The spear contained a terrifying number of divine megatons of power. It was so intense that under its immense pressure, the space that touched the tip of the spear formed a dark dot. This spear strike would definitely kill you. Elizabeth had channeled all her grief and remorse into her spear strike, so much that she had completely forgotten about the order to capture Zen alive. Yet, she saw that Zen only looked back at her with scornful eyes. It could be that she was afraid of him mocking her, so when she met his gaze, she felt an inexplicable rush of panic. Why does he look at me like that? Did I miss anything? Whatever, she discarded all her thoughts, and proceeded to throw the spear of flames in her hand. However, at this moment, the eyes of the last corpse spirit Sun Crow that Zen did not take away lit up like emeralds. Its torso flipped in the air. Then it fiercely flapped its wings and hit Elizabeth's body. Bang! The wings slammed her hard, and she fell from the sky. Chapter 3231, A Cognitive Space. If those corpse spirit Sun Crows had owners present, it would be impossible for Emperor Charm to steal them. Previously, when Zen stole the corpse spirit Sun Crows, he had to drive the demon women of the divine lair away from them or directly burn them to death with blue flames. Since Elizabeth sat firmly on the last corpse spirit Sun Crow's back, Zen couldn't take it away. However, she suddenly left the corpse spirit Sun Crow in the last minute. Fortunately, it wasn't that far, so Zen had a chance to steal it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While Elizabeth fell from the sky, Zen immediately entered the Skynet with all the corpse spirit sun crows. At that point, he had taken away all the corpse spirit sun crows led by Elizabeth. Of course, the corpse spirit sun crow's wings were quite strong. As a result, she didn't manage to stabilize herself in the air until she had dropped down sharply for a certain distance. Once she was back to her senses, she looked closely at Zen and saw that he had already fled to the inside of the Skynet with all the corpse spirit sun crows. Now, Zen didn't leave right after he had entered the Skynet. Instead, he flashed her a smile and shouted across the Skynet, "To be honest, I'm interested in fighting with you." Although he hadn't climbed up to a higher stage of the other shore realm yet, there wasn't a big difference between him and powerful warriors like Elizabeth and Athamar when it came to the soul of light, corporeal body, and the other shore token. "Now," Elizabeth said seriously. Her eyes were full of hatred, as if she wanted to eat Zen alive. "Not now," Zen answered with a grin. He clearly wasn't like Athamar or Pierce, who had more access to information because of their higher positions. But even without thinking, he could tell that the corpse spirit sun crows were by no means the only weapon of the sun crow race. Since Elizabeth and her army alone were able to make the 7 mountains remain inside the Skynet, the leaders of the 7 mountains, the Oneness governors, and other powerful warriors must be afraid of something, though he didn't have the chance to know what that was yet. Still, he inadvertently got involved as he controlled nearly 100 corpse spirit sun crows. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's pupils continuously dilated as she stared at Zen. Blue wisps of fire appeared on her crimson golden wings. The originally loose flame feathers turned into blue short swords, and at the same time, her aura surged. Swoosh! Elizabeth's aura spread out. Within 3 seconds, it had spread to hundreds of miles around it. At the 12 passes on both sides of the Skynet, including the Mountain Sea Pass, the Battle Rage Pass, the Heavenly Wind Pass, the Oneness Generals, the Oneness Guards, and warriors of the other shore realm were all fighting against the Sun Crows. Generally speaking, each pass was only responsible for the area in front of them. Hyam, the evil god, and the others were all assigned to the 12 passes. They led many Oneness Guards to a fierce battle against the Sun Crows. Swoosh! When the powerful aura swept like a windstorm, both the Sun Crows and the humans who were in a fight, froze and simultaneously looked in the same direction. In the past few days, the evil god had guarded the Heavenly Wind Pass. Without Zen by his side, he was much more relaxed and he no longer felt restrained. The first time he arrived at the Heavenly Wind Pass, he had enraged several Oneness generals to the point that they almost battled each other. When the evil god remembered that Zen was behind him, he restrained his impulse to fight. Nevertheless, it wasn't long before the Oneness generals in the Heavenly Wind Pass were finally impressed with his powerful strength. In a short period of time, he had led the warriors to repel several rounds of attacks from the Sun Crow race. That was why he was very surprised when he felt that strange aura and said, "Is there such a powerful existence among these poor birds?" He was so intrigued that he was even itching to leave the battlefront at the Heavenly Wind Pass, just so he could find out and see what kind of being gave out such an aura. Just then, a long sound of horns suddenly came from within the Heavenly Wind Pass. It was a sound that signaled them to retreat. The evil god frowned at the sound. He hadn't been tired of killing yet today, so he didn't want to retreat so soon. He still wanted to fight more, but to the warriors of the other shore realm who were pushed out like livestock, the blare of the horns was like the sweet sound of nature that gave them a life-saving straw. Retreat. We will be safe once we are within the Skynet. Gant floated in midair with 3 red swords by his side. As a disciple of the Flow Sword sect, he was summoned to the Heavenly Wind Pass. In addition, he had the same status as a Oneness Guard. On the contrary, the disciples of the Sword Light Palace led by Monica, such as Belden and Elgin, were in a worse situation. Despite their considerable talent, it was too short a time since they had joined the Dragon City. Due to their current skill set, it was hard for them to be promoted to the Oneness Guards in less than 100 years, let alone join the Flow Sword sect. Judging from their strength, they would suffer a lot of damage in the battle against the Sun Crows. Luckily, Gant had borrowed a powerful sword from his race before he set out. He and Monica tried their best to protect the disciples of the Swordlight Palace. Many of their people were injured, but only a few had died, which could be considered a miracle in their situation. Run, I can finally go back. God bless me. All the humans quickly retreated to the inside of the Skynet. It turned out that it was Pierce who had given the order. The battle had reached the second phase, and the 12 passes had accomplished their mission. And the Oneness Guards in the 12 passes were not qualified to take part in the following battle. At the same time, the Skynet couldn't block the aura Elizabeth released. Zen stood right in front of her, so of course, he received the aura's impact from all directions. If his soul of light hadn't reached the ultimate level of the indigo soul, he would have suffered serious damage. What kind of skill is this? She became much stronger, he exclaimed. It's the Dream Blood Thurgy, replied Emperor Charm. She will have a desperate fight, he added. A desperate fight? Can she tear the Skynet apart? Zen asked. I don't think she'll be able to tear it apart, Emperor Charm glanced at the Skynet and answered. The Dream Blood Thurgy was a Thurgy that only Emperor Charm himself could bestow upon someone, and it could greatly stimulate one's own potential. In the 77th Chaos, he had only granted it to no more than 100 demon women. Then again, the Skynet could endure the continuous attacks of more than 100 corpse spirit sun crows. Even if Elizabeth's strength increased by 10 times, it still wasn't enough to tear such a powerful array apart. Zen had planned to run away, but he changed his mind after he heard the answer from Emperor Charm. Although Elizabeth had activated the Dream Blood Thurgy, it was true that she wasn't in a hurry to attack him. After all, she knew that it was in vain, and she only did such a thing to release her emotions. She did it for the people behind her to see. Is this your strategy, Springer? It's so ridiculous, she said through life vitality. As she spoke, her voice echoed in a space behind her. That particular space was quite strange that it fell in the category of cognitive zones. To be precise, the space existed, but it did not exist. Because she believed that the space existed, it floated behind her. As for the others like Zen, Pierce, Athamar, the Oneness Generals, and the Oneness Guards, they didn't know the existence of that space. Thus, for them, it did not exist. Chapter 3232, Flipping the Skynet. Pierce, Auden and the leaders of the Seven Mountains all had very sharp insights. Because of this, ordinary hiding skills could never deceive them. However, the method the Sun Crow race used was one they had never seen coming. It was for this reason that they failed to see through the Sun Crow race, even if they did everything in their power. This was also why Pierce didn't dare to act rashly. Just then, a cocky voice rang through space. It was no other than Springer. Humph, are you blaming me? What a blasted shame. Over 100 corpse spirit sun crows were gifted to your divine lair, but they were all taken away while the Skynet is still there intact. What a joke, Springer said sarcastically. Even if he was rude, he was right. And as a super force, the Sun Crow race had several branches to use for their advantage. Found in these branches and the divine lair, were the royal guards of Emperor Charm. Among these guards was Springer, who was given a status and strength that was on a par with Elizabeth's. Any race would know that 100 corpse spirit sun crows would be a great advantage and weapon of destruction. The Sun Crow race could not tolerate such a loss. While it was Springer who came up with the plan, he'd want to put the blame on Elizabeth. Yes, Elizabeth, your divine lair is too lame, another voice spoke out. Over 100 corpse spirit sun crows are more than enough to annihilate an ordinary great force. Elizabeth pursed her lips. If it were you, what would you have done? You saw how Zen stole the sun crows away. Who could have stopped him? Springer suddenly said, I will kill him before he gets close. However, not many agreed with this. One voice expressed this very clearly, I don't agree with you on this, Springer. It is easy to be wise after the event. Could you foresee he was able to take away the corpse spirit sun crows just like that? The voice was shrill, almost anxious and angry at the same time. There seemed to be many powerful people gathered in the space. You're right, it's not Elizabeth's fault. The human boy is to blame, another voice cried out. I'm still puzzled by him and how he'd managed to take away the corpse spirit sun crows. As they continued to argue, it came to a common conclusion. What happened was so strange, that it could have only been possible if Emperor Charm had intervened. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed slightly as she spotted Zen from a distance. There's no point arguing about this. We have already lost the corpse spirit sun crows, and the Skynet can't be broken in a short amount of time, she said hurriedly. What are you going to do? Suddenly, Springer rose up in the space. He resembled a human being, but had a pair of black, powerful wings behind him. These wings clattered with every flap as if they were made of metal. Pierce is as smart as a fox, Springer pointed out. Now that the corpse spirit sun crows have been taken away, he would keep on defending at all costs. True, the 6-flame array has been set up, and it would be difficult to change plans now, another person said. Similar to the Skynet, the 6-flame array was found to be a very powerful array. The main difference between the two were their uses. The Skynet was used for defense while the 6-flame array was used for attacks. Then we must wait. Maybe Emperor Charm will come, Elizabeth said calmly. Despite all their efforts, the Sun Crow race still had the upper hand. It was only a matter of time until they broke through the Oneness Sky Palace. Indeed, I think a stalemate would be the best decision for now. Just let them live a few more days. We are not in a hurry, anyway. One by one, the people in the space expressed their agreement. Though the Sun Crow race would be willing to enter a stalemate, this was not what the Oneness Sky Palace thought. Back then, when Pierce followed Eastern Emperor Tai, he was not only powerful in strength, but also resourceful. It was because of this that he could see through every move of the Sun Crow race. However, due to the insufficient strength of the Oneness Sky Palace and his low prestige, he couldn't command or ask help from the powerful masters of other 6 mountains. Thus, he was put in a passive situation. In this case, the Skynet would collapse sooner or later, which could cause chaos. However, Zen accidentally stole the Sun Crows, which allowed for the situation to be reversed. This brought Pierce on his toes, and his eyes flashed with a dazzling light. The communication rune in his hand lit up once again as he ordered, "Flip the Skynet." Wait, flip the Skynet. As Goran heard Pierce's order, his heart skipped a beat. Even Auden, who was usually stoic, revealed a trace of surprise. The Skynet was used for defense, but flipping it around could make it become a fierce weapon of attack. Isn't this decision too hasty? After all, Eastern Emperor Tai is not here yet, Auden asked, hesitating to proceed. However, Pierce's face was painted with determination. This is not a rash move. There is only one chance for us, he said firmly. Since Zen has made them suffer a great loss, we'd have to seize this opportunity, or else he would have done it for absolutely nothing. Flip the Skynet. The Golden Array and the Ivory Array, move south. The Curved Spirit Pass, the Battle Rage Pass, head north. The Bright Array, Pierce ordered. Aside from the Mountain Sea Pass and the Vastness Array, the remaining arrays and passes all turned around towards different directions. Originally, the Skynet closed in on the Sun Crow race from both sides. According to Pierce's orders, the 2 sides of the Skynet advanced forward. In this way, the Golden Array and the Bright Array, which were on the ends of the 2 sides, would meet, forming a circle, enveloping the entire Sun Crow race right at the center of the Skynet. Before, no warrior of the 7 mountains wanted to be the first to fight. However, through cooperation with each other, their plan moved so smoothly. Just like that, the 6 arrays of the mountains and 11 passes all moved in sync with the Skynet. When it all started happening, the Sun Crow race didn't notice. They were complacent in the fact that their strong warriors and Elizabeth were hiding not too far away in front of the Mountain Sea Pass. The only ones left at the back were the Sun Crows of lower intelligence. Meanwhile, Elizabeth concentrated on deploying the forces as she planned to summon more Sun Crows from the North Unicorn Province. An hour had passed and she found a large group of Sun Crows that remained in a place 800 miles behind her. Puzzled by what she saw, she released her spiritual sense and her face changed slightly. "The Skynet," she said, "is trapping us in it." As soon as Elizabeth finished speaking, the surface of the once translucent net emitted a bright red glow. Just then, the surging killing intent spread along with the glow, as if it could kill anything that approached it. The Skynet was now one big killing machine. At this time, the voice of Pierce rang out. "Shrink." The Skynet, which had turned into a huge circle, began to shrink inch by inch. As the Skynet shrank, the distance between the 7 mountains and the 12 passes grew closer. Eventually, it would trap the Sun Crow race, and 7 mountains would also attack together. With the Sun Crow race trapped in the center, they would all have great advantages to win. "What a smart move," Yevon praised from the Vastness Array. And throughout the execution, not once was the Vastness Mountain needed. "I have underestimated that Pierce," Natasha said coldly. The entire Skynet began to fold right from the Vastness Array and the Mountain Sea Pass. This also meant that there was no need for the Vastness Mountain to move. Since the Vastness Mountain already had plans of rebelling, this move fueled their suspicion that they might have been exposed. Chapter 3233, The Shrinking Skynet. Yevon did plan to join the Sun Crow race's attacks on the Oneness Sky Palace eventually, but at a critical moment to deliver the fatal blow. While the Skynet remained in place, the Vastness Mountain wouldn't dare make a move. They couldn't risk revealing their hand in the conspiracy too early. For now, he had to continue pretending to be on the side of the other 6 mountains. He had to wait for the right moment to strike and make his rebellion known. Meanwhile, Zen remained on guard near the Skynet even after seizing control of the corpse spirit Sun Crows. The Sun Crow race still hadn't made a move, even as the Skynet continued shrinking. It was clear a storm was brewing. A voice suddenly piped up in Zen's head. General Zen, please come to the Oneness Array. Zen quickly recognized the voice. It was Pierce, the master who had once scolded him in the Supreme Dragon Hall. Not that it mattered to Zen now. It was but a distant memory in this time of war. With his mind, he directed the corpse spirit Sun Crows to fly to the Oneness Array. They headed out in a neat formation. They soon arrived at a magnificent array of lofty swords. Each one was occupied by a master from the Oneness Mountain. Zen cupped his hands in front of him and bowed to them respectfully. The masters eyed the corpse spirit Sun Crows, which all emanated such gloomy and powerful auras they subconsciously made anyone observing them keep their guard up. The Oneness Array was consisted of lofty swords arranged in a wedge-shaped formation, one in front, then others widening to the back on both sides. Libby, who occupied a lofty sword at one end of the array, craned her neck to finally catch a glimpse of this Zen people kept talking about. The disciples on the first and second floors of the Land of Sword Grief were in different arrays of the 12 passes, while the disciples on the third floor were in the arrays of the 7 mountains. This was because the disciples on the first and second floors were closest to Oneness generals in terms of strength, while the disciples on the third floor were most similar to Oneness governors. This didn't explain, however, why the powerful Libby was placed at the end of the array. She was definitely not weaker than the masters of the Oneness Mountain. She had simply been placed in a less prominent position because of her junior status. After joining the array, she had been sitting quietly on the lofty sword, waiting for orders. She was not qualified to participate in the decision-making yet. She was only subject to the more senior master's commands during battle. Libby now stared at the new arrival. When Pierce and the others had been discussing Zen earlier, Libby hadn't been paying much attention. She was just now realizing she had seen Zen before. She had already encountered him in the Land of Sword Grief, but he had left such a weak impression in her mind then that she didn't even bother catching his name. She never imagined that guy would be the famous Zen. Her eyes narrowed at him. This is the guy who ranks first on the second floor. I would never have thought he was the same person Elder Pierce and Elder Auden were talking about. Libby thought to herself, scoffing with incredulity. Word in the Land of Sword Grief was, this Zen's talent was extraordinary. Some had even said he could surpass Libby. But she refused to accept he could match up to her in only a few months. Over her dead body. He was probably just another overhyped upstart. She did wonder, however, how a new disciple on the second floor managed to turn the corpse spirit Sun Crows over to his side. She couldn't deny that accomplishment. He was accompanied by the crows, after all. HMPH. He probably just stumbled upon a special method by sheer luck. Libby thought to herself disdainfully, looking Zen over with a raised eyebrow. She had always been the pride of the Oneness Sky Palace. She didn't even take the Mountain Chief's son seriously. Why would some newbie disciple impress her? She was confident enough in her strength to take on masters like Athamar and Goran. Zen probably couldn't even compete on the same level. As he straightened up, Zen spotted Libby in the array. He was a bit surprised she was in the formation, but he figured disciples on the third floor were qualified to join the great arrays, anyway. Shrugging it off, he continued riding the corpse spirit Sun Crow toward Pierce. Libby slit her eyes. She was sure Zen had caught sight of her, yet he didn't even acknowledge her. She glowered at being so disregarded. You summoned me, Elder Pierce? Zen asked, as he approached. Pierce eyed the corpse spirit Sun Crow hovering beneath Zen's feet. Yes, it was me. But first, I must apologize, Zen, for my behavior before. Forgive my indiscretion, he said humbly. To punctuate his words, he bowed deeply before Zen. That Pierce, one of the founding members of the Oneness Sky Palace, would humble himself before Zen this way surely boosted Zen's status. Oh, no, please, sir, it was no issue at all. No offense taken. Zen waved his hands frantically in embarrassment. To his surprise, Auden chimed in. You truly deserve not only our apologies, General Zen, but also our gratitude. Without you, we would have been in deep trouble by now. Zen was taken aback by Auden's words. He only had the guts to steal the corpse spirit Sun Crows from Elizabeth simply because he was confident the Oneness Sky Palace had his back. He didn't realize, until now that Auden highlighted it, that he had made a rather crucial move they hadn't even thought of. Since these crows are under your control now, General Zen, we hope you can assist us when the Sun Crow race breaks through, Pierce implored him. Zen nodded. It would be my honor. I came here on Master Goran's call to arms. It is my duty to fight for the Oneness Sky Palace. But if I may ask, what is the situation now? Zen guessed Elizabeth had a greater force behind her, but he knew nothing about the details, nor how the Oneness Sky Palace planned to deal with it. Pierce trained his eyes on the shrinking Skynet. If I'm guessing right, there should be a great array behind Elizabeth. After the Skynet shrinks to a certain extent, the Sun Crow race will launch their full attack. As the other 6 arrays and 11 passes continued to move, the circular Skynet kept contracting toward its center. Strong as Elizabeth was, she had no choice for now but to fall back in the face of the Skynet. Nothing could be seen in the space behind her. With a series of caws, the Sun Crows swooped in from all corners of the sky to gather in the area behind Elizabeth. They all disappeared in groups as soon as they reached that spot. The Skynet shrunk to only 800 miles across. 500 miles. 200 miles. 50 miles. As the span of the Skynet continued to shrink, the distance between the 12 passes and the 7 arrays also decreased. The mountain chiefs all guarded their large arrays as they observed the Skynet warily. No one would let their guard down, not even if the Sun Crow race were successfully caught in the Skynet. The Skynet shrunk further. It was only 25 miles wide now. The Sun Crow race was now only one step closer to the Oneness Sky Palace. Up in the sky, all the other Sun Crows had seemingly disappeared, save for Elizabeth. Elizabeth exhaled and moved her hands. 6 dots of light emerged behind her, flickered, and quickly expanded into 6 hexagonal seals. Together, they formed an immense array. Chapter 3234, Collapse. The array was engraved with 6 fire-shaped seals emanating ferocious energy. Pierce recognized the seal on sight. This is the 6-flame array. It's extremely deadly. Everyone, be careful. Terror washed over the mountain leaders as the warning reached them. The array must be a sure killer if no less than Pierce was spooked. Buzz. Figures started to become visible within the array. There were over 100 people within the 6-flame array, and most of them were Emperor Charm's royal guards. Though the divine lair was the main force of the Sun Crow race, these guards matched Elizabeth in strength and status. Elizabeth flapped her wings, positioning herself in the center of the array. Springer hovered beside her, beating his black wings. He glared at the Oneness array. "You've forced our hand, so here we are," he called out menacingly. He turned to the Sun Crow race, booming out in a voice that reverberated in everyone's ears. "Destroy the Skynet." At these words, the energy in the 6 fire-shaped seals burst out in 6 flames of different colors. The heavenly canopy flame, the world exterminating flame, the spiritual karma flame, the 6 kinds of flames shot out simultaneously. They had all been created by Emperor Charm with the divine flames of the Sun Crow race. Each flame was stored in the seal and nurtured for tens of millions of years. When the flames emerged, they looked less like fire and more like 6 sharp sabers. As the 6-flame array began to rotate, the 6 sabers slashed at the Skynet. Sizzle, 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 the entire Skynet array began to shake violently. The sight horrified the Oneness generals of the 12 passes. What kind of array is that? It's powerful enough to destroy anything. The Skynet array can't withstand it at all. The Skynet had been able to survive the fiery power of over 100 corpse spirit Sun Crows. But now, after only a few cuts from the 6-flame array, it was about ready to collapse. Pierce, however, remained steadfast in his faith. The power of the 6-flame array is extraordinary, but the Skynet array is powerful, as well. Indeed, the Skynet began to glow fiercely no sooner had Pierce uttered these words. The Skynet, which earlier appeared to be on the verge of collapse, had recovered to its original state in an instant. Its bright light turned into huge swords that slashed back at the 6-flame array. Whoosh, 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 the shining swords sliced through the 6-flame array. The colorful flames burst out in all directions. The 6-flame array was extremely powerful, but it was not built for defense. It also began to shake as soon as it was cut. Elizabeth looked around at the unstable array, the panic mounting on her face. It seems the 6-flame array can't withstand the attack. Springer just sneered. "Don't worry, the 6-flame array doesn't break that easily. Let's see who will last longer." Buzz. A pattern appeared beneath Springer's feet, emitting great energy. With a flash, the 6-flame array stopped shaking and stabilized. Indeed, it appeared the battle would thus be decided on which array could last longer. The powerful warriors positioned in the various arrays of the 7 mountains started to become uneasy. Whichever side gave in first would be put at a great disadvantage. It could even determine the victory of this war. Creak, creak, whoosh, whoosh. As the 2 great arrays continued to attack each other, the power they produced reached over 100,000 divine megatons. Ripples in space began to spread because of the immense energy fluctuations. The Oneness generals, the Oneness guards, and the other shore realm warriors of the 12 passes could only gape in awe at the sight. What a horrible force. The impact might be powerful enough to crush everything it hits instantly into powder. We can't participate in a battle of this level. 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. When the battle had raged on for about an hour, a huge crack started to appear on the surface of the sky net. Crack. The net started to fracture like a beautiful glass mosaic. Springer, Elizabeth and the others in the 6-flame array felt a rush of triumph at the sight, but it didn't last long. Cracks also started to spread like fish scales on the surface of the 6 seals on the 6-flame array. Crack, 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 the 6-flame array began to collapse. It can't stand the attacks anymore. I hope the Skynet array still manages to trap them. Amid the hubbub, there were those who remained silent. These were the people at the bottom ranks. They detested the war. They knew they had very little chance of surviving. Even if their side won, the rewards that would trickle down to them likely wouldn't be worth all this risk. Pierce turned serious as he kept his eyes trained on what was happening to the great arrays. Get ready, all of you. The victory or defeat of the Oneness Sky Palace depends on the next move. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The arrays of the 7 mountains began to light up. Everyone was now on full alert. Zen, too, concentrated his mind. The mouths of more than 100 corpse spirit sun crows began to glow with the blue light, ready to shoot flames. Boom. The sky net collapsed first. What began as a crack was now a full-on gap. The entire array began to dissipate, starting from the ruptured area. But as this happened, the 6 seals of the 6-flame array also collapsed into a crystal-clear powder. Go. Zen was the first to react. The corpse spirit sun crows emitted light beams from their mouths, straight at the center of the collapsing 6-flame array. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The powerful warriors positioned in the Oneness array started rising from the ground, pulling out the huge lofty swords they had been occupying. It came quite naturally to Pierce, Athamar and some of the other warriors. Libby, however, struggled a little with her lofty sword, her fair face betraying a hint of fatigue. She gritted her teeth and eventually managed to keep pace with the other masters. The bright array, the golden array, the ivory array, and all the other arrays also began to move. Everyone was ready to give their all in this battle. Just then, a purple light shot into the sky. It came from the vastness array. But instead of targeting the 6-flame array, the purple light separated into 6 rays, turning into 6 huge purple swords. Each one hurtled straight for the other 6 arrays. A cold smirk played on Gethin's lips. He had chosen this critical moment to bring the rebellion out in the open. Gethin knew Pierce and the others had been on guard against him for a long time. It was too bad that they were too busy to be on the lookout now. It was a fatal mistake. Chapter 3235, One-on-One Battle. The purple long swords that came down from the sky suddenly charged straight towards the 6 arrays. The sudden sword attacks greatly shocked the mountain leaders. What is the Vastness Mountain doing? Gethin is really rebelling. True, but he was really good at hiding from us. The 7 mountains had been accumulating their strength to try to fight against the Sun Crows in the 6-flame array, but the Vastness array just used their accumulated strength on their peers. Don't be distracted, I'll do it, Auden shouted. Then, he flew upwards as the lofty sword beneath him glowed a bright golden light. Splash! Just then, the lofty sword's blade flipped and flew straight into the sky. Although Gethin was powerful and so was the Vastness array, his attack ended up being divided into 6 parts. If Auden used all his strength, he might be able to take the impact. The Golden Mountain and the Ivory Mountain could also resist the attack, but they would have to be distracted because of this attack. Suddenly, a strong spatial fluctuation burst out from the 6-flame array when it exploded. In turn, the people inside the array all used the grand teleportation technique and quickly disappeared. As a result, the blue flames from the corpse spirit sun crows and the fierce skills the other mountains released had all missed their targets. The cage of heaven and earth had been set since the beginning of the battle in the North Unicorn province. However, people like Elizabeth, Athamar, and Pierce were still able to break free from the cage of heaven and earth. As the battle continued to advance south, however, the range of the cage of heaven and earth became smaller and smaller. It was known that the smaller the area the cage covered, the stronger its power would be. That was why if the entire cage shrunk to a radius of 10,000 miles, even a powerful being like Pierce wouldn't be able to use the grand teleportation technique there. Despite all those conditions, there were still some Thurgies in the Sun Crow race that could resist the cage of heaven and earth. Such a case was also Springer's second conspiracy. Buzz. At that point, Springer and another 8 people appeared in the Ivory Array. Their sudden appearance stunned all the powerful warriors in the Ivory Array. After all, they had been on their guard the moment they saw all the members of the Sun Crow race disappear just now, and they did not expect that those members of the Sun Crow race would be so bold to transfer themselves into the array via the grand teleportation technique. Springer glanced at the leader of the Ivory Mountain, who was close to him and said, "Break it." Then, he flapped his black wings and flew towards the leader of the Ivory Mountain. In turn, the leader of the Ivory Mountain sneered and slashed at Springer's head with his blood-red sword, and a fierce battle between them ensued. The Sun Crow race moved to different arrays in batches, which was also Springer's idea. Even though the Skynet was torn open, the 6 arrays continued to guard against the Sun Crow race. For instance, the Oneness Mountain had deployed the 13 Spiritual Swords array, which possessed the mighty strength of the 13 Lofty Swords. Meanwhile, the Ivory Mountain deployed the Bloody array. The Golden Mountain also had its own array. Now, over 100 people including Springer and Elizabeth could indeed use the grand teleportation to leave since the Skynet was already broken. However, the Sun Crow race's goal was not only to break the Skynet, but also to completely capture this group of mountain leaders. It was highly necessary to break the several arrays the mountains were guarding. Of course, the Vastness array was not included. As soon as Springer fought fiercely against the leader of the Ivory Mountain, the others began to tear the entire Ivory array into pieces. At the same time, Zen saw the members of the Sun Crow race instantly disappear when he drove the corpse spirit Sun Crows from his position in the Oneness array. He thought that something unfortunate was about to happen. The next moment, a blue feather suddenly appeared in front of him. At the end of the feather was Elizabeth. Elizabeth was an executive in the Sun Crow race, while Springer was the brains for them. When Springer had proposed a new plan, Elizabeth agreed without hesitation. She hated Zen to the core so much that she couldn't allow to let him live for one more second. Of course, there were also other members of the Sun Crow race who came along with her. Those other members dealt with the strong warriors like Pierce and Athamar. "It's not up to you now," Elizabeth said with a ferocious smile. Her snow-white and delicate face looked somewhat charming despite her evilness and ferocity. Swoosh! The moment she was done speaking, her wings flapped furiously and she flew towards Zen. When she was near him, her wings grasped Zen just like a big pair of hands. Then, she simultaneously pierced him with her flaming spear. No matter what tricks Zen used, he had no chance of winning against someone stronger than him. Furthermore, he couldn't teleport like last time because he was under the shackles of the cage of heaven and earth. The sight of Zen, who had toiled her plans repeatedly, but was now about to die, greatly pleased Elizabeth. She sighed contentedly as if she had finally killed a powerful opponent. As for Zen, he simply patted her wings and leaned forward. When he saw that the spear was about to touch his body, he took a deep breath and rolled over in an attempt to avoid the spear's tip. However, Elizabeth was quicker to react than he was. Even if he endlessly rolled left and right, her delicate but deadly spear always followed him like a shadow, as if his defenses didn't affect it at all. Whoosh! The flaming spear let out a whistling sound, then it was directly pointed at his chest. Phew! In a split second, he had become a flaming man. Because he had never been harmed due to fire many times, Elizabeth didn't expect that he would burn to ashes. But her spear strike contained 15,000 divine megatons of force this time. She had personally witnessed him enter the chaotic source realm. Furthermore, it had been only a few months since he had left the chaotic source world. She was sure that he was still at the early stage of the chaotic source realm. Not to mention that 15,000 divine megatons of force, even half of it might be enough to exhaust his chaotic source spirits and disintegrate his body into pieces. But this was Zen, and with him, something unexpected happened a lot. Cling! Finally, Elizabeth's spear stabbed into Zen's body, but it only made a crisp sound. It turned out that the chaotic source spirits in his body withstood the spear. Then they began to weaken, but his mysterious truth of godly way rapidly fluctuated and cooled within each chaotic source spirit, thus quickly restoring their strength. How? Elizabeth exclaimed in disbelief. She couldn't believe what she saw, and Zen even had the guts to smile at her. Go to perdition. Nevertheless, she released all the power within her body. Her flaming spear released a terrible force of 25,000 divine megatons, which was close to her limit. She didn't know how Zen had blocked her first spear, nor did she want to figure it out. She paid it no mind and proceeded to release more force. Whoosh! The immensely strong force pushed the flaming spear even more, then it let out a sharp whistling sound and went straight towards Zen's head. Even in the face of such a powerful spear strike, Zen just faintly smiled. Could he still withstand this spear's attack? Just as Elizabeth thought about it, she felt a burning aura around her. The aura did not come from her flaming spear, but from the corpse spirit sun crows that were flying everywhere. Chapter 3236, Summoning Worlds. The corpse spirit sun crows now followed Zen's every command. When Zen was fighting with Elizabeth, all the corpse spirit sun crows scattered around had closed in on them. Before the beasts had the chance to burn them with their blue flames, Elizabeth quickly moved towards Zen and thrust her spear into him. Unfortunately, her attack failed to kill him and the blue flames burst from the beasts' beaks and swept over them. It would be impossible for her to survive the attack even with her exceptional ability to control fire. Zen, on the other hand, could easily withstand the flames. As she flapped her wings, Elizabeth's extremely slim body began to float back in the air. It was as if she was as weightless as a piece of paper. She passed safely through one of the gaps in the blue flames while Zen accepted the baptism of fire with ease. Elizabeth originally planned to find another way of taking him down once she was at a safe distance away from the roaring blaze. However, it was obvious that Zen had no intention of letting her escape so easily. Just as she passed through the hot inferno, 3 corpse spirit sun crows had already surrounded her. Their wings were similar to sharp blades. Whoosh, 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 their wings sang as they sliced through the air. A casual strike from one of these crows contained 20,000 divine megatons of force. It would be difficult for Elizabeth to defend herself from such powerful strikes. Her body still floated in the air and her wings flapped constantly to dodge the attacks. Just as she managed to escape the 3 corpse spirit sun crows, a dozen more corpse spirit sun crows rushed towards her. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Aside from those corpse spirit sun crows that attacked her in close combat, more corpse spirit sun crows also began to spew blue flames in her direction. Just as Elizabeth spun over the back of one of these crows, several more of the vicious beasts began to claw at her head. Now, over 100 of them took their turns to try and attack Elizabeth. Get away! From her delicate and tender outstretched hands burst an unexpected and unimaginable power. She grabbed 2 of the corpse spirit sun crows and began to swing them around. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The 2 corpse spirit sun crows she spun around and circled her like a windmill, sweeping all of the other corpse spirit sun crows away. During this attack, another figure silently approached. It was none other than Zen. Quickly, he morphed into a sharp arrow and struck down from high above with his sword and aimed at Elizabeth's back. Crack! Zen's strike failed to hurt Elizabeth due to the chaotic source spirits protecting her. To her surprise, his casual strike turned out to contain 10,000 divine megatons of force. A few more strikes from him and her chaotic source spirits would surely be exhausted. Is he strong enough to kill me? The terrifying thought emerged in her mind. Whoosh! Elizabeth flapped her wings, trying to make Zen stay. But as soon as he struck his first blow, he ran as quick as a cheetah and disappeared behind the flock of corpse spirit sun crows in the blink of an eye. Unfortunately for her, the monstrous birds surrounded her again. Ever since he had gained control of the corpse spirit sun crows, Zen began to wonder how to best use them to his advantage. They were impervious to water, fire, swords, and spears. However, one disadvantage was that they were rather slow due to their huge size. They could only rely on their numbers to defeat someone as powerful as Elizabeth. It would be challenging to trap a warrior as strong as her. But without warning, Elizabeth jumped straight into Zen's trap using grand teleportation. She was right where he wanted her to be. Zen was worried she'd use the same power to escape again. Judging by the current situation, she wouldn't be able to use that power when she was alone. Bang! Elizabeth managed to smash one more crow, but even more of them arrived and enveloped her. They just kept piling on, layer by layer. Once she managed to pass through 2 of them, Zen appeared again, undetected like a ghost. Swish! Another strike from Zen's sword slashed her back. Luckily, the chaotic source spirits prevented her wings from being cut off. As Elizabeth turned to try and catch Zen, the corpse spirit sun crows that were hard to defeat wasted no time in attacking her. When Zen and Elizabeth were locked in combat, others from the Sun Crow race and the Oneness Sky Palace were locked in their own battles too. Springer's plan worked wonderfully. The powerful masters of the 7 mountains didn't expect that the Sun Crow race would charge into their arrays. In the blink of an eye, the Bright Array, the Golden Array, and the Ivory Array were destroyed by the Sun Crow race. But the powerful masters of the 7 mountains weren't weak. Even without the help of the arrays, they were still strong enough to defend themselves and attack. Buzz! A blood-red light burst as the leader of the Bright Mountain shook his long sword. Soon, the world around them was tinged in red as vibrant as blood. Even in the middle of the battle, the leader had managed to directly summon an entire world. The civilization artifact of the regal jade civilization which Zen had obtained and the civilization artifact of the heavenly obsession civilization which the evil god had obtained were limited to stage 13 and stage 11. Although the power of the civilization artifacts was terrifying, due to the pressure from the other shore, neither Zen nor evil god had reached their full potential and power yet. The civilization artifact the leader of the Bright Mountain held came from stage 30. The power the other shore tokens from the Desire World burst out was unlike any of the Lust World's other shore tokens. Bloody descent. The blood-red light spread out and covered a radius of 1,000,000 miles. The entire area now appeared to be bathed in blood. All everyone could see was tinged with a vibrant crimson. The leader of the Bright Mountain summoned the blood-red world. He's bent the rules in this area. It is said that the blood-red world can suppress all others' bloodline powers to increase his own bloodline power. Whoosh! With a long sword in his hand, the leader of the Bright Mountain turned into a ray of blood radiance and pierced through a member of the Sun Crow race. You think you're the only one who can summon a world? In the distance, Springer let out a sinister laugh. He spread out his black wings and black feathers began to float in the air. These feathers spread out quickly, like drops of black ink on white paper. Soon, another world was summoned and it covered the blood-red world. Now, black masses floated everywhere. They were like ferocious ghosts that pounced in various directions. Whoosh! A oneness guard hardly had time to dodge when a black mass invaded his body and turned his flesh black almost instantly. He looked at his hands and feet. His face was full of fear. But this fear was short-lived. Black spikes began to jut out of his back one by one. His eyes sank into the sockets and his body began to broaden. He turned and twisted until he became an unrecognizable monster. Come out, fickle demons. Ha ha, Springer laughed and commanded. The civilization artifact he carried was used to summon demons. Once it was used, everything in the world would become sacrificial offerings. The more sacrifices, the more powerful the fickle demons would become. If there were enough sacrificial offerings, they could even produce fickle demons that could surpass powerful masters like Emperor Charm and Eastern Emperor Tai. Chapter 3237, Planning on Escaping. As the battle raged, many oneness guards and oneness generals in the 12 passes could only watch in awe. They wouldn't dare get caught in a battle of this level. But they were snapped out of their stupor when the ink blobs appeared. Their blood ran cold at the sight. Activate the array. Everyone, withdraw and head to the pass. We can't fight that thing. Countless oneness guards and warriors of the other shore realms stampeded into the passes. Every time a world descended, the rules were changed. Fortunately, no other world had been unleashed but those by the leader of the Bright Mountain and by Springer. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dozens of ink blobs appeared above the Heavenly Wind Pass, floating in the air. As one, they rushed downward, wrapping themselves around the 5-star oneness guards before they could enter the protective array. As soon as the ink touched them, the oneness guard's skin turned black and started to crack like charcoal. They became another manner of creature altogether. Now hollow-eyed monsters, they turned around and wildly pounced on their former colleagues. Woo, woo, one of the black monsters howled as it scrambled toward the evil god. When the black monster was about 24 feet away, light flashed in the evil god's hand. He tossed a diamond-shaped token formed by the way's blending energy. Bang! The diamond-shaped token exploded on the black monster's head, smashing it into pieces. The evil god snorted, "You asked for it. Nothing could have survived that blast." However, the black monster somehow began to get up again, its head having reformed. A monster created in this world becomes immortal in this world, huh? The evil god murmured to himself, thinking aloud. The blast drew the attention of more black monsters. They all began heading toward the evil god. The evil god glanced at the Heavenly Wind Pass not far away. He deliberated if he had enough time to make it there. Deciding he did, he was taken aback when he turned in that direction. It had taken him only a second to decide, but the path was now cut off by a large number of black monsters, swarming toward him. The evil god had no choice but to run. But an idea was starting to form in his mind. The oneness generals who were able to make it to the Heavenly Wind Pass observed the situation from afar. It seems the oneness general called the evil god can't make it, after all. Should we help him? No, leave him alone. The evil god had displayed his powerful strength at the Heavenly Wind Pass, but he was still generally disliked. The oneness generals had fought on the battlefields for many years but somehow feared the evil god, so they were hesitant to come to his rescue. But the evil god, at this moment, had other things in mind. As an inner world generating avatar, the evil god couldn't even think of opposing Zen. But he could distance himself from Zen using these black monsters and the chaos of battle as an excuse. Thus far, Zen had showed he could freely control the evil god. If he so wanted, he could freeze the evil god on the spot, making him unable to move. However, the evil god was convinced there must be a limit to that control. There must be some range beyond which the controller would no longer be able to reach the inner world generating avatar. The evil god now saw a chance to test that theory. Wah! Wah! The black monsters chased after the evil god as fast as they could. The evil god was as light as a swallow as he sped onward, flying close to the ground. After reaching certain distances, he would draw some divine megatons of force from the civilization artifact of the heavenly obsession civilization in Zen's inner world. He could only do this as an inner world generating avatar under Zen's control. The evil god theorized that once he was no longer able to extract the force, then it must follow that he was out of Zen's control. At this moment, Zen was crouching down on the back of a corpse spirit sun crow, taking a break. Controlling so many corpse spirit sun crows was not an easy task. After fighting with Elizabeth for a while, Zen decided to return control of the corpse spirit sun crows to Emperor Charm. The creatures seemed more agile in his hands, anyway. Pop! Elizabeth suddenly lobbed a ball of blazing flame at Zen. The flame was so strong that even Athamar might not have been able to survive it. But surrounded by corpse spirit sun crows, the flame didn't reach Zen at all. In Elizabeth's anger, it seemed she forgot Zen was unaffected by the flames. At this moment, something caught Zen's attention in his mind. It was the evil god, running eastward at full speed. In a flash, he entered the evil god's mind. Through the evil god's eyes, he saw the dozens of twisted black monsters chasing after him. Zen figured these black monsters probably appeared from a summoned world. Zen read the evil god's memories. He discovered that the evil god had been drawing some divine megatons of force from his inner world as he was being chased. This struck Zen as somewhat strange. Stop running, kill those black monsters and come back to me. Zen's orders took over the evil god's mind. The evil god stiffened on the spot. He gritted his teeth. This had been his only chance to escape. But he wasn't able to disobey Zen at all. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The evil god stretched out his hand and flung diamond-shaped tokens at the monsters. Bang, 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 each token exploded on a black monster's head. However, these creatures were indeed immortal. After exploding into pieces, they simply reconstructed and came back to life. To make matters worse, every time they recovered, the black monsters only seemed to grow in size and strength. The evil god squinted at them. He had another idea brewing. He flipped his body in the air, flinging diamond-shaped tokens again and again at the black monsters. Bang, 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 the black monsters exploded again and again, continuing to reform and reanimate. With each recovery, they became more and more powerful. Springer, who was watching events unfold from the core zone, began to get puzzled. These monsters came from the world he unleashed, which was called the Fickle World, so they were called Fickle Demons. He knew they were immortal, and that they grew stronger with every reanimation. It could go on endlessly. Most opponents would stop attacking the Fickle Demons as soon as they discovered this. But now, here was someone who still kept attacking despite clearly seeing this only made the Fickle Demons more powerful. Unbeknownst to Springer, the evil god was doing this intentionally. Outwardly, he was only following Zen's order to kill the monsters, after all. But once the situation reached a tipping point, he would make his escape. Chapter 3238, The Real Emperor Charm. Whiz. All of a sudden, a sword radiance was aimed right at Elizabeth's back. However, just as the sword slashed down, Elizabeth already prepared for the attack. She spun around and broke Zen's long sword into 2 clean pieces. After that, she swung her spear right at Zen's head. Looking at Elizabeth, who grew more and more angry by the second, Zen was surprisingly calm. As if by chance, his head tilted enough and avoided the spear completely. Right after he recovered, he sat steadily on the back of the corpse spirit sun crow. Though Elizabeth wanted to chase after him, the corpse spirit sun crows piled up and blocked her way. These crows resembled a moving forest, so dense and hard to navigate through. This made Zen a hunter lurking, and Elizabeth, the beast. Zen would stab Elizabeth with his sword whenever he had the chance. A stab would not hurt Elizabeth, but it could consume a small amount of chaotic source spirits. Hopefully a number of strikes could kill her, too. Elizabeth never would have guessed that she'd be on the losing end. It seemed that these corpse spirit sun crows were so agile that no matter which direction she fled to, they would follow right after her and block her way. She was always too proud to ask for help from the other members of her race, but this time was different. After being slashed several times, she felt a sense of urgency and desperation. If she didn't escape, she would be as good as dead. On top of that, the fact that Zen was a junior frustrated her. Eventually, Elizabeth decided to summon for help. However, no one came to her rescue or even responded to her. It seemed that the other members of the Sun Crow race were all preoccupied, and no one could salvage her. Whoosh! Just as she dodged the attack from a corpse spirit Sun Crow's wings, Elizabeth gritted her teeth and spread her wings wide. They flashed and glowed with a magic luster, prepared for her next move. 100 Phoenixes Dance. Just like that, Elizabeth's body emitted a blue light as her bloodline power was awakened. This made her incomparably agile now. She then flapped her wings so powerfully, that she turned into 100 fierce phantoms. As long as a small gap was maintained before her, the phantoms could go out. Even from a distance, one could see many phantoms of Elizabeth, some big and some small. All she wanted to do was get rid of Zen. She had no choice but activate her bloodline power and use her bodily movement skill to save her life. It was notable, because this form of bodily movement skill was so complex and strange that even warriors with higher levels of cultivation, like the leaders of the mountains, were unable to locate her in a short period of time. Among others, Zen was the most surprised to see the Elizabeths of different sizes. At one point, he was dazzled by what he saw. If it was Zen who controlled the corpse spirit Sun Crows, he wouldn't be able to stop her. However, the real opponent Elizabeth had to face was not Zen anymore, it was Emperor Charm. Emperor Charm had a smile across his face. The 100 Phoenixes dance proved to be a unique bodily movement skill of the Sun Crow race, and in fact, it was a Thurgy he'd created. So even though Elizabeth was extremely agile and created phantoms to set people off, Emperor Charm could see right through her. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The corpse spirit Sun Crows from the outermost layer circled around once, only to be followed by the corpse spirit Sun Crows from the middle layer, and finished off with the corpse spirit Sun Crows of the innermost layer. As the corpse spirit Sun Crows moved in this motion, Elizabeth's avatars were destroyed one by one. This sent her speeding towards a narrow passageway, just in her hope to break through. From the passage, she could already see the blue sky outside. Just as Elizabeth thought she could escape, two corpse spirit Sun Crows came at her at the same time. Crack, crack, but before she could even pass through the passage, 4 huge claws of the corpse spirit Sun Crows cornered from both sides and she could no longer move. With a look of pure shock, her eyes widened as she watched Zen emerge from under a corpse spirit Sun Crow. She turned pale and cold, as if she had just seen a ghost. Zen approached her slowly, looking calm and stern at the same time. Because Elizabeth had broken Zen's sword, he held the soaring snake sword tightly in his hand right now. At this point, Elizabeth already lost more than half of her chaotic source spirits. She probably wouldn't stand a chance against a slash from the soaring snake sword. It was right then and there that she realized she had already been defeated. She remembered that 2 years ago, she could have destroyed him with just a flick of her finger. "Why can you break my bodily movement skill?" Elizabeth asked. She sounded calm, as if she'd accepted the death that awaited her. However, she still felt it unbelievable that Zen had seen through the 100 Phoenixes dance at first sight. Zen didn't strike her with the sword. "I didn't see through your bodily movement technique," he answered. "Then how?" Elizabeth trailed off, more confused than ever. "It was someone else who saw through your bodily movement skill," said Zen. "Who is it?" Elizabeth knew that only Emperor Charm could see through it at a glance, but it was impossible that he would be here, much less that he would help Zen. However, Zen didn't acknowledge her question. Just then, a shadow appeared above his head. It was none other than Emperor Charm himself. With a gasp and wide eyes, Elizabeth couldn't believe what was before her. Numerous guesses of what might have happened crossed her mind. "You are..." She even thought for a second that before her was only a soul fragment of Emperor Charm, but the aura didn't match completely. However, her instinct told her that this was most definitely Emperor Charm himself. "I am Emperor Charm," answered Emperor Charm, completing her sentence. As Elizabeth absorbed what she saw, she couldn't help but fall to her knees. Emperor Charm exuded an aura of unmatched authority. It was so powerful that his presence alone was enough to make any one of the Sun Crow race surrender. "But you are not." She still had doubts, no matter how real he was right in front of her. "I'm not the Emperor Charm you know," he said. "I'm the real Emperor Charm, the first Sun Crow ever. The Emperor Charm you know of is a seed I sowed in the Source World. He's my avatar." Of course, the Emperor Charm in the Source World knew about his origin, but he had never exposed anything about the 77th civilization to the public. Elizabeth's eyes widened once again. Over the years, the Sun Crow race was a super force that was highly submissive to Emperor Charm. But according to this man, the Emperor Charm in the source world was only his avatar. I don't believe it, she gasped again, looking befuddled. She was the type of person to be firm in her belief, and that was what kept her always energetic and full of fight. Her belief was Emperor Charm, who she obeyed unconditionally. But because of this man, her belief had been gone. To Elizabeth, this was worse than dying. Zen, said Emperor Charm. Meanwhile, as he was watching the event unfold, Zen held the sword and struck it outwards into the air. The sharp soaring snake sword burst out with a strong force that was aimed towards her shoulder. However, the toughness of Elizabeth's body surprised Zen. Seeing that she was not affected with the strike, he struck her 3 times in a row. Eventually, Elizabeth's chaotic source spirits grew tired, and the sword finally pierced through her shoulder. As blood gushed out of her, Emperor Charm's eyes flickered with a golden light, and just like that, Elizabeth's blood floated into the air, forming a thin red line. My avatar gave you the dream blood Thurgy, which can stimulate your potential. However, he indirectly controls you this way, Emperor Charm explained patiently. I created the dream blood Thurgy when I was young. It had a flaw before, but I solved that later. Emperor Charm had lived through over 1,000 chaotic eras on the other shore. Because of this, he had enough time to think and rethink cultivation methods, Thurgies, and ideas that he had created before. This had allowed him to perfect each and every one of his creations. Chapter 3239, Bloodline Worship. The thin line formed by the blood rotated under the control of Emperor Charm. It acted like a red silky ribbon tied on a stick, and Emperor Charm took control of that invisible stick. At the same time, dots of light were extracted. The light dots moved together and formed into a strange pattern in the air. Zen stared at the light dots bewilderedly. He followed their movements with his head and tried to understand it. He asked curiously, "What are these light dots?" "The bloodline power," replied Emperor Charm as his hands moved in the air, guiding the movement of the dots. Zen and Elizabeth were taken aback upon hearing Emperor Charm's response. Both of them took a gasp and looked at each other with wide eyes. The bloodline power had been hidden in the blood, but both Zen and Elizabeth had never seen anyone ever extract it. It was the first time that they had seen the physical bloodline power. As this was something peculiar, Zen and Elizabeth watched avidly. After extracting the bloodline power, Emperor Charm began to adjust the light spots. He pushed some further and drew some others closer. Zen felt as if the light dots were a little familiar. They were very similar to those in the abstruse energy world. However, the distance between the light dots in the abstruse energy world was significantly large, and there were many of them. That was not like the few in front of him now. It took only a short while for Emperor Charm to properly adjust the light dots. Buzz. The light dots that maintained their positions merged into Elizabeth's blood again. Hiss. The blood turned into a thin line which moved in a steady pace and went into Elizabeth's wound. Her face revealed a painful expression during the process. Her hands were balled into a fist. She clenched her teeth and her eyes were shut closed. The bloodline power that had been adjusted by Emperor Charm was different from the original one. Thus, it was rejected by the bloodline power in Elizabeth's body. Because the two kinds of bloodline repelled each other, there was an unbearable pain for Elizabeth to bear. With astonishing willpower, Elizabeth endured the pain silently. The bloodline power refined by Emperor Charm was more powerful. It continuously assimilated the remaining blood in Elizabeth's body. In just a short span of time, the blood in her body had been completely transformed. The corpse spirit sun crows that had caught her also loosened their huge claws. Zen took a step back as his body's reflex. His expression revealed a look of vigilance and his breaths grew faster and shallower. After all, this woman had tried to kill him again and again. It was understandable that he had to guard against her. "Don't worry, she can't kill you," said Emperor Charm, trying to sound reassuring. "What do you mean?" Zen asked, confused. "After the transformation, she will only acknowledge allegiance to me," replied Emperor Charm. Zen shot a look at Elizabeth upon hearing his response and witnessed how Elizabeth's expression became very complicated. In her heart, she clearly hated Zen. She wanted to kill him badly, but it was as if her body did not agree. No matter how hard she tried, her body refused to move. It was not because she was spiritually enslaved. Rather, it was her blood that was enslaved by Emperor Charm. In fact, unbeknownst to some, this kind of enslavement had been existing since the birth of the Sun Crow race. The ordinary Sun Crows and the many demon women in the divine lair unconditionally trusted and submitted to Emperor Charm. This kind of submission was engraved in their blood. Therefore, there were only very few betrayers in the Sun Crow race. If there were any betrayers, like Elvenia and Flamen, their blood was not pure. Also, they would be detested and hated by their race. This loyalty was part of the bloodline worship. It was also in this way that the ear mice could control other kinds of mice. Emperor Charm turned to face Elizabeth and spoke in a firm tone, "Zen is the spokesperson of the 77th civilization. From now on, he is your master." Hearing this, Elizabeth was not convinced. Her body experienced a dissonance. The pair of wings on her back were trembling slightly, but her instinct forced her to lower her head. She gritted her teeth and said, "Yes, master." She was not in control of her own body, but the annoyance was very much noticeable in her tone. Not long ago, she had been doing what she could to try to kill Zen, but now she was respectful to him. After seeing Elizabeth obey the command she was given, although reluctantly, Zen was surprised. An idea suddenly came to his mind. Her blood has been transformed. If we inject her blood into other members of the Sun Crow race. "You are smart," said Emperor Charm with a faint smile. This kind of bloodline worship was engraved by instinct, and of course, it was only effective for the Sun Crow race. Under the order of Emperor Charm, Elizabeth reluctantly drew out her blood. The corpse spirit Sun Crows that had been wrapping Elizabeth quickly separated. Elizabeth was positioned in the inner layer and was riding a corpse spirit Sun Crow. After she locked a target, she rushed over to attack. In midair not far away, Libby was stepping on the lofty sword with a serious and determined look on her face. In front of her stood a burly member of the Sun Crow race. He was standing confidently, making him look much bigger than he really was, as if he weren't built big enough. His name was Duggan, and he was one of the best royal guards of Emperor Charm. For Libby, Duggan was the strongest opponent she had ever faced. In the battle with him, she would definitely die if she were not careful enough. Her pretty oval face was full of caution and seriousness. She squinted her eyes and clenched her fists. "You seem to be very young," Duggan said confidently as he spread his wings. He raised his right hand, and fire snakes slowly moved around his arm. "It's rare to see such a young talent. Ha ha." Before Duggan could finish his words, Libby tapped the lofty sword with her tiptoe. The sword then suddenly turned over, slashing towards Duggan in an immense speed with supreme power. At the same time, Libby ran hurriedly along the blade of the sword. She had two short swords in her hands, both of which were extraordinary and sharp. Whoosh! There was a tingling in the air as she moved her hands holding the swords. As the two short swords flickered, her speed suddenly increased and she disappeared in an instant. The next moment, she appeared on the right side of Duggan. Duggan had surely underestimated Libby's agility. The lofty sword slashed from the left, and Libby attacked from the right. Duggan had no way to escape. "Nice try." Duggan looked at Libby with a wide smile. "Unfortunately, your strength is too weak." He stretched out his wings and moved to dodge the lofty sword on the left, pouncing towards Libby. There was a flash of surprise in Libby's bright wide eyes, and she waved her hands in an instant. Crack, 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 crack. In just a few seconds, Libby had slashed over 100 times. Because the power of these strikes was not that strong, they were still unable to exhaust Duggan's chaotic source spirits, so he was not hurt at all. "I've told you that you don't have enough strength," Duggan said with a mischievous smile on his face. Libby frowned and leaned back. Like a swallow flying backwards, she tried to escape back to the lofty sword. But Duggan had already stopped Libby before she was even able to move. He spread his wide wings, and countless fire snakes flew out from them. They quickly formed a huge fire net, completely enveloping Libby. "It's a pity that a talent like you would be killed like this." Duggan licked his lips with excitement on his face. With a gentle pull of his hand, the fire net began to shrink rapidly. His eyes were gleaming and the flames were reflecting on them. He couldn't seem to wipe the smirk off his face. Unlike Zen, Libby couldn't bear the burning of the flames. If the fire net continued to shrink and burn, it would not be difficult to imagine what would happen to her. Libby's face turned pale. Just then, a corpse spirit Sun Crow flew down and pierced through the fire net to her side. She was terribly desperate at the moment. When she saw Zen rush in, she was utterly stunned. When she came to her senses, she asked, "Why are you here?" Zen didn't answer her, but instead pointed to the sky. Elizabeth, riding another corpse spirit Sun Crow, landed beside Duggan. Chapter 3240, the second one. Elizabeth landed, followed by more than a dozen corpse spirit Sun Crows. Duggan saw them and scoffed disdainfully. "It took you so long to get just these few corpse spirit Sun Crows back." He raised a brow in Zen's direction. "You even kept that mongrel alive." As far as Duggan was concerned, it was because of Elizabeth's carelessness that the Sun Crow race lost the court spirit Sun Crows. The least she could do was to get them back. Duggan sneered. He had thought with her long departure, she would have managed to retake more of the beasts. But she even failed to kill Zen. I tried my best, Elizabeth said weakly, avoiding meeting Dugan's eyes. Duggan rolled his eyes and shifted them onto Zen and Libby. He smirked at Zen. I don't know why you threw yourself into the net, but feel free to go to perdition together with that beautiful girl. The fire net that had been broken by Zen was restored to its original state. It began to shrink at an alarming speed. Libby was still confused, but Zen hadn't answered her question. She gritted her teeth. I have no other choice. Buzz. 3 ice crystals emerged over Libby's head. They were snow ice crystals from stage 29 of the other shore. As soon as the snow ice crystals appeared, the temperature around Libby dropped sharply. A big ice cocoon enveloped her and Zen. The ice cocoon had amazing defensive effect. It could not be broken by even 20,000 divine megatons of force. However, the snow ice crystal could only serve as passive defense, and could not be used as a main other shore token. Back then, Libby had merged with this other shore token because she thought it might come in handy sometime. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The surface of the ice cocoon pushed into the fire net. The blazing flames started to melt the firm ice, slowly but surely. At this rate, the ice cocoon can only hold for half a minute at the most. Once it's all melted, we're still dead, Libby said with a trembling voice, desperate and helpless. She turned to look at Zen and was surprised to see that he looked quite calm, without the slightest trace of panic. She wondered angrily how he could be so unperturbed at a time like this. Zen looked Duggan straight in the eye and motioned toward Dugan's side. Watch your left. Zen smiled. Puzzled, Libby looked to the left of Duggan. So did Duggan. A few thoughts raced across his head as he turned to look. The icy cocoon was holding on for now, but not for long. It seemed the fire net would kill Zen and Libby quite soon. But Zen didn't look like a person on the verge of death at all. He even had the gall to continue chatting with him. Now what could be so important on his left? Dugan's eyes landed on Elizabeth. The moment Duggan turned his head, Elizabeth approached him and grabbed his neck with one hand. What are you doing? He cried out. Elizabeth's only answer was a ball of flame in her palm. Boom. Elizabeth used all her strength to attack Duggan, not to kill him, but to exhaust the chaotic source spirits in his body. Duggan was stupefied that Elizabeth would attack him. The chaotic source spirits in Dugan's body began to lose power under the force and the divine flame of the Sun Crow race combined. Now that Dugan's chaotic source spirits were depleted, his physical strength became negligible. Elizabeth cut her fingertip lightly, infusing a drop of her blood into the meridian on Dugan's neck. Have you gone mad? What is this, Elizabeth? Duggan covered his neck with his hand and stepped back. Of course his first thought was that Elizabeth had betrayed their race, but if that were so, why hadn't she killed him? Libby was as confused as Duggan. She turned to look at Zen. What is going on? What are you two up to? After Zen appeared, Libby had been expecting a fight, not this inexplicable scene. Just wait and see, Zen said in a flat tone. Stumbling away from Elizabeth, Duggan suddenly felt a fierce pain from his neck, spreading all over his body rapidly. The blood in his entire body felt like it was boiling as it was assimilated by the blood Elizabeth had just infused him with. The pain went on for a while before subsiding as quickly as it began. There seemed to be nothing wrong with Dugan's body now except for the exhausted chaotic source spirits within him. Elizabeth, if you don't explain this to me right now, I'll kill you along with them. Duggan screamed, seething. Elizabeth heaved a deep sigh. The bloodline worship was a kind of faith rooted in their blood. The culture of the Sun Crow race, entrenched across generations, made this faith stronger than steel. Elizabeth felt that she was somehow betraying her emperor charm like this, but she literally had no control in the matter. Now that there was someone else caught in this dilemma though, she started to feel a little better. Ask him, Elizabeth said, pointing at Zen. Confused, Duggan and Libby turned to look at Zen again. The shadow of Emperor Charm now appeared above his head, making a pronouncement, when you see Zen, consider him as you would me. Obey his orders unconditionally. Why you? Duggan was about to curse Zen for that vague illusion of Emperor Charm. But just then, an overwhelming force took over him. Yes, I will do as Zen commands, he ended up saying. Libby's mouth hung open in surprise at this turn of events. She seriously wanted to hurl profanities right now. It all seemed like a charade, but she knew this was all real. And we have the second one. Very good. Zen smiled faintly. He glanced up at the sky. High above the Oneness array, the lofty swords and the members of the Sun Crow race continued to fly around, caught in a fierce battle. What the Oneness Sky Palace could really use right now was some higher caliber combat power. The strength of Emperor Charm's royal guards alone could match that of the leaders and powerful warriors of the Seven Mountains. If Zen could infuse the blood into these guards, they would all be under his control and would serve their side instead. Elizabeth had been the first infusion. Duggan was the second. Explain to me what is going on. Right now, Libby shouted, frustrated at not having been given a straight answer all this time. In response, Zen only said, please melt the ice cocoon. Just answer my question, or I swear I'll lock you in here for the rest of your life. As she said this, the snow ice crystals above her head flashed with light. The ice cocoon grew thicker. Zen gave Libby an exasperated look. He didn't understand why she was so angry, but it seemed he had no choice but to explain. I just had some means to make them defect. All you have to know is that they are now subject to my control. Having gotten a simple answer, Libby reluctantly opened the ice cocoon. She actually still didn't understand exactly what Zen did, but it seemed he was telling the truth. After all, two prominent members of the Sun Crow race, Elizabeth and Duggan, were indeed obeying his orders. Whoosh, 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 a group of corpse spirit Sun Crows arrived. Libby watched Zen stand on one and take to the sky. She was left in a daze, bracing against the updraft of their flight.